Hello, and welcome to another quarantine live stream. I think this is number either 7 or 8. Getting lost now with all the
Yeah.
breaks and stuff. So today we're going to be talking about summer blockbusters because we don't have any this summer. And recent news has just really cemented that for us. But before we get into that, we're just going to introduce everyone with a film that we watched recently. So I'm host Peter, and recently I watched 13th by Ava DuVernay.
I've never even heard of that. I'm Kat, and the movie I watched recently that I'd like to recommend was Perfume, A Story of Murder, or like Tale of a Murder or something.
Never heard of it.
Devon pulled a face, so I don't know whether that means he has seen it or whether he's just...
I saw it quite recently, and it was one of the latest films I've seen.
Oh, nice.
I wasn't a fan, but it's fine. We haven't got an order. I'll go. Not a film, but something that's very weirdly filmy. I saw a TV series called Homecoming, the first season of that, and it's very good. And the way it ends, it's very sort of. I don't want to see the second season because it wraps up so nicely into one little bundle. So yeah, that's my. It's not a film because I haven't been watching films at the moment. I've been watching a lot of TV that people have been telling me to watch. So that's my recommendation.
Hi, I'm Duncan, and very, very recently I saw The Fog by John Carpenter. It was just a generic John Carpenter film, to be honest. It had Jamie Lee Curtis in it and a big scary monster. If you like that kind of film, please watch it. It's good. It's not as good as Halloween, but it's not as okay as Big Trouble in Little China. So,
great recommendation there, George.
I recently watched. Oh, I'm George. Yeah, I watched Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's really trippy. I'm still trying to. I don't really know what I was watching, but it was okay. Yeah.
Cool. I still never read the book. It's like semi-autobiographical.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Angus, and I most recently watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
oh, nice. Great choice.
Which is a bit of a light comedy.
I still haven't seen any of it. I know the new one's like coming out.
Yeah, because I don't know whether that's out yet or not, but there's a reboot of it. So
yeah.
I watched the original one.
Cool. So before we get into our main theme today, we're just going to go over some like charts on Google Play and Netflix, and then break down some news. So on Google Play, it's actually changed a wee bit with new releases. So number 10, we've got Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. 9, Knives Out. 8, Dolittle, greatest film of 2020. 7, Jumanji, The Next Level. Number 6, Sonic the Hedgehog. 5 is The Gentleman. 4 is Onward. 3 is Parasite. 2 is 1917. And again at number 1 is Bad Boys for Life, which is doing like amazingly well. Like even when it was in cinemas, it was just like it exceeded all expectations.
Is it still the highest grossing film of the year?
I
can't remember the actual list now.
No, I can't remember. I have a weird feeling it might be, if it's not that, it might be Sonic, which is a really scary thought.
Bad Boys. I think it was. I'll check while you're talking.
And then on Netflix at number 10 we've got The Hangover Part 3. 9 we've got VFW. 8 is The Last Days of American Crime, which has achieved a very rare 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry,
Yes.
10, 9, yeah. Number 7 is Hangover 2. 6 is Get Hard. 5 is Addams Family. That's the animated one by Illumination Studios a year or two ago. Number 4, we've got The Hangover. Number 3 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Number 2 is the newly released The Five Bloods. And number 1 is 365 Days. Has anyone seen any of these films or Any
I'm
thoughts?
planning on watching The Five Bloods soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
same.
seen all the Hangover films more times than I care to admit, and
Yeah, based on those scores, it seems like everyone's rewatching the Hangover films.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
were just added on this week. Um, do you guys like that? Oh, obviously Duncan likes the Hangover films.
Yeah.
I assume anyway. Maybe he just likes to. I don't know. Anyway.
I've only seen the first one, but I thought it was really weird. It was a very strange setup as a comedy in that it sort of was a film that naturally de-escalated. Like it starts off with a very sort of wild, wacky thing, and then it would have done well as a mystery, but as a comedy, it's sort of all the very kind of big, wacky things sort of get solved and explained over the course of the film, to where it's a lot less out there and all over the place the further on it goes. And it was just a very strange like setup for a comedy, in my opinion. It was, yeah, I could see them struggling with their own premise.
Yeah.
the ratings kind of make sense, the Netflix ratings, because it's one of those trilogies that just goes big, bigger, biggest, and there's so much going on in the third one, so that kind of makes sense that that's getting more ratings. Really.
The only thing I remember about, I haven't seen the third, but I remember watching the trailer, and there was one bit with a giraffe on like a motorway, and that's all I know of that film.
I've not seen any of them, so again, I
Me
can't.
neither.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay. I just sort of assume most people have seen the first one, whether it's just like on TV in the background or something. Just because they're shown so often. I haven't seen parts 2 or 3, though. I just decided that wasn't really a concept I wanted to revisit twice with the same people. You know.
I've only seen the first one as well because of that reason.
Yeah. Right, let's get into some news. So this was announced last night, I think. Warner Brothers has moved around its slate once again, with Tenet being pushed back a couple of weeks to the 31st of July, but that's pushing Wonder Woman 1984 back all the way into the start of October. And then Godzilla vs. King Kong is being pushed into May of 2022. But there hasn't really been a lot of marketing for Godzilla vs. King Kong, so I'm just sort of assuming it's not finished anyway. Another news around that is that they've got Junkie XL to be the composer, and he did Mad Max Fury Road and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. He did the latter one with Hans Zimmer. Also, Matrix 4 is getting pushed way back into April 2022. Are you guys disappointed?
Disappointed with the Matrix, but I think all the others make sense. I think Wonder Woman's in a very good place now. It's kind of in the Joker spot and the Venom spot, which has worked very well.
Yeah.
And they're being very clever with what they're doing with Tenet, where in Tenet's old date, they're re-releasing Inception to kind of test the waters. So if the re-release kind of does the numbers that they hope, if it gives a sign that people are going to the cinema, then they'll keep the date for Tenet. If not, then they'll probably push it further, I expect, if just nobody comes to see Inception.
Yeah, I feel like this is turning into Joker, where it's sort of like the context around the film is becoming more interesting than the film itself. And that like they're repackaging, or they're packaging a lot of like marketing content on the Tenet at release. They said that they're going to put in some like exclusive looks at upcoming films and stuff. It's kind of weird. It's starting to feel like just like a marketing ploy during the coronavirus. New York Times did an interesting article where they said Warner, concerned about its Tenet investment, was leaning in favor of delay, while Nolan, a fervent advocate for preserving the movie-going experience, was more eager to press ahead. The discussions were a fraught moment for Warner. Nolan is a proven moneymaker, and the studio wants to keep him happy. How do we feel about this?
I think, like, with Tenet, it's very much like I saw a headline that called it the most important film of the 21st century so far, because really, like, it is, with cinemas having to shut down across the globe, Tenet is really being the film that is sort of pioneering, that it's like testing the waters. And so I feel like whether Tenet flops or not, it's got enough gravity around it that people are interested in it. Whether it flops or not is almost irrelevant, because it's sort of, people are watching it to see whether it will be sort of the comeback of cinema after coronavirus.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, like, especially when you're considering, like, Wonder Woman's been on the slate a lot longer than Tenet, and obviously they're putting a lot more stake into, like, when they're pushing back Wonder Woman and keeping it further apart from Tenet, I think they're thinking, oh, this is a very, very safe bet, and we can't have this be affected by any other sort of environmental or, you know, exterior causes or influences. But Tenet is sort of a bit more of a, I think it's a bit more of a risk anyway, maybe.
I think Tenet is in quite a unique position in that most summer blockbuster films are films like Wonder Woman and Black Widow, where they're very much, their success is not only about making the studio money at that point, but about keeping the momentum of brand and appeal to kind of affect the future cinematic universe that those films are a part of, or sequels or any of that. Whereas Tenet is a standalone film. So if it flops, it will lose money in the moment, but it won't mean that Tenet 2 or Tenet Origins will flop. It will just be very singular. And also the fact that Nolan is going to be making, he gets a cut of the profits. Like, he's put so much money into into Tenet, and funded it, a lot of it, onto his pocket, that he gets a cut of immediate profits. And that means that he kind of doesn't really, he's going to make money whether it flops or not. So he kind of wants it released more than anyone else. And also the fact that since he's getting a cut of profits, the studio is getting less profits inherently. So they also have less kind of interest in Tenet doing billions of dollars than other films.
Yeah, and I think, as we know with sort of the DC films at the moment, I feel like, well, Aquaman and Shazam did quite well as well, but sort of Wonder Woman is the last sort of hope clinging on to what was this whole Batman v Superman into Justice League sort of idea that they were going for, and now they're splitting off with sort of Shazam and Aquaman, but Wonder Woman is sort of the last hope for keeping that all together for the DC universe at the moment.
Yeah, I think the kind of profits of the DC universe have shown that people really don't see DC as a safe brand. You know, you look at their last 5-6 films, it's been flop, wild success, flop, wild success, flop, wild success. They don't, like, you can put out a Marvel film, and whether it's For the Dark World or whether it's Black Panther, you know it's going to make money. You don't quite know how much money it's going to make, but you know it's not going to lose money. It's a safe investment. DC don't have that, and that's what they want.
The Snyder Cut might change that, though. A little bit.
I doubt it. I think the Snyder Cut is very niche for a very small portion of people, and it will make those people very happy.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people very angry, and it will be fun either way.
True, and it is a strange choice to even bring back, really, considering that they maligned Zack Snyder for Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, and now they just apparently want him to repeat the same storyline again, just with more beloved characters.
I think it's going to end up being a very different storyline, the Snyder Cut. I don't really know why though. I mean, the leaks and stuff. I think what's quite interesting though, like, because we've had like Aquaman success and Shazam success, their
Shazam
sequels
wasn't really successful, like at
it
launch.
made a fair amount of money actually, like
Okay.
$100-something million in profit, and then it's been doing really well on the home media front.
Yeah.
So although like on paper it looks like it's like, oh, it's only made so much over its budget, because it was so low budget and the marketing wasn't like hyper, you know, it wasn't like Endgame or whatever. There wasn't a whole lot of extra expenditure on it, and they were able to sort of make a very comfortable profit. So yeah, Be interesting. Anyway, Children of the Corn reboot wraps filming, defying Australia's social distancing coronavirus measures. This is a weird one. I didn't even know this was happening, let alone just sort of like, oh yeah, we're just going to defy our government here and do it this anyway.
Hasn't there already been a remake of Children of the Corn?
Yeah, well, this would be like the third or fourth one.
I think they'll use that for advertising. Like, we made this film. Come watch it.
It's going to be like the Star is Born of horror films.
That would actually be quite cool if they, for marketing material, like had a documentary crew showing them like secretly making this film. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Like, undercover filmmaking.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do that. I mean, like, The Hunt, which came out a couple of months ago, was delayed after a big controversy, and then when they restarted their marketing, they put the controversy at the forefront of sort of like, oh, look at us, we got cancelled briefly, you know, but we're
It didn't
back.
work, but they tried.
I really see it. The Changeling is also getting a remake by Anders Engström. I don't know, I can't really say the Swedish names. I don't know The Changeling as a horror movie. Have you guys seen the original?
I hadn't even heard of it, weirdly.
Okay.
I do know the Wolfman's getting a remake, though.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that, because David Crope says that his Bride of Frankenstein film is still on the slate. And what they're trying to figure out now is what sort of budget they're going to put towards it. They don't want it to be like a huge expenditure like The Mummy, but they don't want to go as small as The Invisible Man. So it's really interesting. I really like this approach where you're just making like remakes of classic monster films and reimagining them and not connecting them together. It's just like an anthology series.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really refreshing.
Yeah, because I do know
away from in universes and stuff.
Is that the same director that was on board when Angelina Jolie was attached to play the titular character?
You know, I'm not sure, but I'll have a wee look here.
Okay.
I mean, considering I know they originally had Johnny Depp down to do The Invisible Man, I'm pretty sure that most of their plans have changed at this point.
Well, there was that very funny image that like 2 weeks before The Mummy released, they had this image come out advertising the Dark Universe, cinematic universe, as this new kind of, the new big thing. And it had Johnny Depp, it had Russell Crowe, Tom Cruise, and what's the guy from Skyfall and...
Javier Bardem.
Yes, Javier Bardem. And the girl from... Kingsman and
the Mummy.
The Mummy. Yeah, the one who plays the Mummy. Anyway, they're all together, and it was like, this is the new thing. And then like a few days before the Mummy came out, when people realized, oh, this isn't going to make any money, they cancelled it.
I still really want to see a Russell Crowe Jekyll and Hyde. I think that'd be a really good film, and he'd be really good at that as well, I reckon.
Well,
they did it as one of these anthologies rather than trying to tie it all together.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited to see the Wolfman as well. I think they've got Ryan Gosling attached to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know they did a remake a while ago with Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, but I like to think with this one they're going to kind of tap into more of the themes of the original, less of a kind of a schlocky werewolf film, more of a, like they did with The Invisible Man, more of a, and tap into the themes of kind of man versus nature, that kind of thing, more that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just checked. David Coop is the screenwriter on The Bride of Frankenstein, and he has been since the start, and so this is just the studio reaffirming him as screenwriter, and that John Krasinski and Sam Raimi have both expressed interest, and Bill Condon was the original director, but he dropped out.
Oh. I was going to say, I'm really glad that Ryan Gosling is attached to Wolfman, because I feel like he's an actor who's really good. Well, he's sort of typecast as a guy who's very emotionless and doesn't really show anything or say anything. It's because he's annoyingly good at it, but he's also really good at being very emotive. So hopefully the Wolfman, he can be like very unemotive when he's like really sad about eating people, and then he can be really emotive when he's eating people.
Yeah, I really hope they go for practical effects over CGI, like less of a Van Helsing type thing, more of an Invisible Man type approach.
Yeah,
I hope they go like a comedy approach. I don't know. I just think Ryan Gosling would be really good at doing like a comedic take on the Wolfman. They haven't announced a director for it yet, though, so who knows? Might not happen in the end, but we'll see. Hopefully it will do. Also, David Fincher's Mank is hoping to be released in October on Netflix. I don't know anything about this. Devon, help me out here. Or David Fincher buff.
So it is a film that his dad, David Fincher's dad, has been writing for the last 20 years about the screenwriter who worked with Orson Welles on his filmography. And it's Fincher really trying to, because he's usually very slick and modern in his films, kind of very digital, very, it looks like a Fincher film. And this is his attempt to be kind of to challenge himself. So he's making it look like a 1930s film. He's making it black and white. He's kind of really trying to envelop himself in that style, not just with the kind of the world and the visuals, which he does a lot, but with the actual filmmaking. It's a subject that I would not be excited for with any other director, but if he can make a Facebook film good, I'm there day one.
Well, if it's on Netflix, I'm sure I'll watch it. Artemis Falls finally been released on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The reviews are, I think it's just, it's what everyone expected it to be. Let's be honest here, it's like 15% or whatever. I don't know, did you guys read the books? Were you like excited about it before you watched the trailer, and then you watched the trailer?
I read a few of them, but I wasn't excited to see the film, to be honest.
I read like the first 6 books. I really liked them. I liked the fact it was so botched from the premise. Like the fact that they removed the whole like fighting against sexism aspects. They removed the whole like Artemis Fowl is the villain. That's the point of the films, and they made him not the villain. They made him the hero, and it's just like what? Why were you adapting this book?
It's one of those like kids book adaptions which reminded me of like Alex Rider's Stormbreaker, the old like when the film released, and like everyone was super excited about like the books and that, but then the film came out and it was just like, this isn't what we read. And it's just, I felt like I was excited about the film when they announced it, but then I don't have Disney Plus, so I haven't watched it. But when I saw the trailer, I was just like, oh, it's just a kids film.
They have just released that Stormbreaker TV show, so it might Artemis Fowl might work better as a show.
I was looking into it, and it's not actually based on Stormbreaker. The plot's been taken from Point Blank.
Yeah, the second one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I heard it's actually pretty good. I'll probably watch it when I have nothing else to do.
It looks pretty good. It looks a lot more like the books are meant to be. Not quite as kind of over the top as the movie was, anyway.
Yeah, not super modelish.
Just that guy hanging upside down with 2 guns on a helicopter. That's all I remember from Stormbreaker.
I just remember horses, like people on horseback, and I think it's the love interest.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It just like it stood out. It felt like very out of place because it's in a very urban setting. Like it's in London or whatever.
It felt exactly like some studio head was just like, I want a horse scene. And everyone was like, there's no horse scene in any of the books. And he's like, no, I want a scene where he rides a horse. And they're like, okay, we'll think of something.
Yeah.
Stormbreaker sort of feels like a video game movie.
Yeah.
I think the plot's based around video games. Or no, maybe that's Skeleton Key.
That's the 5th book, I think. Or the 4th book. Is like he's trapped in a real life video game.
Yeah, that's Eagle Strike,
Well, I think Stormbreaker's to do with a computer company. I think it's something technological.
Okay.
That's like it's 3D.
Yeah.
The true Alex Rider film we needed.
The crossover we need to see.
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier the Five Bloods has been released. So no one's watched it yet? No?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was planning to, but it's like 2.5 hours long and just didn't have time. Lily James is the star in a new film called Peggy Joe, which is going to be loosely based on real events about a woman who committed bank heists disguised as a man.
That's cool.
I miss those films. I'm up for that. I'm down.
You guys like Lily James?
Was she the one in Baby Driver?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, then yeah, she's cool.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Yesterday, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
right.
think she was in like a British TV show. I think she might be in like
Downton
Downton Abbey
Abbey.
or yeah.
Yes. Yeah. She's very good in that. Yeah.
It's weird to think that there was a Downton Abbey film last year.
I know.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what like the sort of like older demographic can actually do for a movie. It's like there's aren't many movies that are catered to just older, usually women, and then that one was, and it just did spectacularly well. So
But
like,
it's also like it. Imagine 3 years ago, you're like, okay, there's a popular TV show that's going to be concluded with a movie, like a proper movie in cinema. You'd be like, oh, it's definitely Game of Thrones. Definitely.
that's
Or
true.
maybe
Yeah.
Breaking Bad. Or what are they? No, Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey, guys.
I'll never forget a time I went to see Bad Times at the El Royale at Tyneside, and it was like a matinee screening, and it was just like filled with older women, and I thought it was brilliant. I was like,
They're all there to see Chris Hemsworth.
yeah, it's just you don't know what to get up to during the day when everybody else is working.
When they drop the kids off at school.
Yeah, and then we'll go and see this like Tarantino like thriller. All right, big news. The Academy is implementing diversity requirements for Oscars eligibility, returning to a guaranteed 10 Best Pick nominees, starting with the ceremony for 2021 films, and they're term limiting its Board of Governors, and requiring unconscious bias training. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's nice to know that they're trying to do stuff, but I don't know. I don't really see it working out in practice. Just like,
I'm so glad they're doing the 10 films. Like, I feel like every year people are like, why don't you just have 10 nominations? Because the current way they do it is you've got to get at least 5% of the votes to be like, to get a nomination, which is so like weird and arbitrary and means there can be any from 5 to 10. And it just, there's always a film which is left out and always one that you're like, why didn't this get a nomination? So yeah, it's just good.
So like the 1 year in which hardly no movies have come out, they're going to make it so that you can pick more movies.
It's all rigged. They just want Sonic with an Oscar.
It's deserved.
Imagine if that's the like, it's like what you did in one of the earlier quarantine ones, where like you have to pick out of a really, really tiny pool of movies, and if they have to pick 10, then it's like well, you know.
That's it. That's all the films that came out this year. There's just 10 of them.
Just 10, yeah.
Margot Robbie going for those consecutive nominations.
Exactly. She's gonna like sweep anything she didn't win in previous years. It's just all gonna rack up just in 2020. That's gonna feel really bad.
I'd be there for it. Wasn't she like nominated twice at the BAFTAs?
I don't know.
I think she was for like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and what do you call the one with Charlize Theron and Nicole Kidman? The Fox News one.
Something Bombshell.
Bombshell, yeah.
Yeah, I think she got nominated twice
Gosh.
in the same category for it, and everyone was like so pissed.
Yeah. Sorry.
Right. No, you go.
I was just going to say, you know how you mentioned, I don't expect you to know a huge amount about this, but you know like how you said unconscious bias training?
Yeah.
Interesting, like, I mean, of course, like, that's great, but, like, that does seem like quite a tough thing to put to adults, we're going to give you unconscious bias training. I don't know. I just think that's going to be quite difficult to train people in.
Yeah, I don't know enough about psychological theory to
Mm.
sort of say how this will work out.
No.
I imagine it'll be very expensive to provide this unconscious bias training to a new board of governors every year.
Does seem like an excuse for, we don't want to make our board diverse, but we want to seem like we're doing something.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
might do it so like they'll do a streaming service for them. Don't tell them directors and stuff, and just be like, this film could be a guy, could be a girl, that sort of thing.
yeah, sort of do like a blind showings
Yeah.
of all, but it requires people to sort of not follow any movie news for a
Yeah,
whole
that's
year.
right.
And these
Yeah.
people like
That's really hard.
ingrained in
I'm
the
just
industry.
thinking that all the people in the Oscars are really old and don't use internet.
There is also the thing, like with the whole male gaze kind of philosophy, in that even people who are not in even people who are in a minority may have unconscious biases against their own minority simply because of the society that they've been grown up in. What they've always been told is a good film, is a good piece of acting, is good, etc. So yeah, I imagine it would be I have no idea how you would go about it. And I could see it being relevant, but I also feel like it's not the, it needs to be put in place with other measures. And the fact they haven't said they're putting in other measures is probably a bit telling.
Yeah.
Shuv also mentioned that Ava DuVernay has been elected onto the board of governors, and that she will represent the director's branch, while Whoopi Goldberg has got a spot in the actor's branch now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so slowly getting there, hopefully. Yeah. The 1 year we don't have any films. But anyway, AMC, a huge theater franchise brand in America, has reported a $2.2 billion loss, and they're hoping to do a full reopening in July. I think they'd already declared bankruptcy, or were on the verge of bankruptcy earlier during lockdown. So yeah, we'll see. I don't think they were doing like overly well before all of this. I think there was like a lot of controversy in America over the cinema chains, especially this like I don't know, like a card where you know, like a subscription card where you pay so much and then you can sort of see as many films as you want. And then they're like, oh, we're not going to recognize this. And just cinema becoming like extremely expensive in America with very few cheaper substitutes. So yeah, we'll see. Netflix rejected The Room. That's it. Says Tommy Wiseau.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because you can only buy The Room, and I know this because I've done it. You can only buy The Room from Tommy Wiseau's website for like £23. And yeah. I think if he would make a lot less money if it was on Netflix, so I don't believe at all that he refused.
I think I read that because it's got the disaster artist on at the moment. Like,
Yeah, it has.
Tommy Wiseau tweeted like, "Oh, I wanted both of them on, but Netflix were like, no." I don't know if that's true or not.
No, it's that somebody tweeted Tommy like, "Hey, disaster artist is on. Why can't we have The Room?" And he said, "I offered, but they refused." And he's lying. He's lying.
People would just ask, like, "Can I have 50% of Netflix, please?"
Yeah.
Nah.
Oh. What happened to that documentary they were going to release about him? You know, the one with all of his backstory in it.
Oh yeah.
I actually wrote an article on this earlier in the lockdown.
Yeah, you did. It's really good, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so it ended up in a lawsuit, and they've won. The creators of it have won. And Tommy Wiseau has had to pay like the court damages, as well as like any impact on the money the documentary was going to make, because it was originally going to be coming out around the time of The Disaster Artist, where there was a lot of hype around The Room. So the court sort of evaluated, oh, it would have made a lot more money had it been released at that time. Yeah, and also just all of the information around Tommy Wiseau's life can be accessed by the public. So the court sort of decided like, oh, this isn't like infringing on privacy, because anyone can access this if you dig deep enough. So yeah.
Kind of on one hand, you want to know what was behind the curtain, really, but on the other hand, it might be a bit of an anticlimax if you find out that there's just nothing really interesting in his backstory, really.
Well, you can find out what country he's from. I won't say it on the show in case people like to keep the mystique around it.
That's part of it, isn't it? That's part of the whole reason why the Disaster Artist did really well is because people wanted to know more about the room. And so, but the Disaster Artist managed to keep enough mystery around it that it's sort of it's got that mystique and sort of intrigue into the room and the Disaster Artist. But I think to have a fully blown documentary just sort of explaining all of the questions, then I don't know whether that will sort of diffuse the sort of magic around the room that exists.
Yeah. I think this is one of those ones where it's sort of like the fiction has as much value as the truth, or more value. So, yeah, I don't even know if they're going to release it anymore.
I can't find anything that's talking about a release. Like on their website, they have something saying "Hey, we won the lawsuit," but it never actually says. There's no link to a place where it's hosted or you can buy it or anything. Yeah,
that's a shame.
So we're nearly done, by the way. Don't worry, we'll get on to the actual show. We'll get into the main event at some point. Lee Cronin is to direct a new Evil Dead film called Evil Dead Now, according to Chris Campbell. Ari Aster is planning a 4-hour nightmare comedy. Doug Liman, this actually was nice. I think I was meant to say it in the video game one, forgot. He's doing that weird Elon Musk Tom Cruise space film. Of course, Tom Cruise and Doug Liman have done previous weird sci-fi space stuff in the past. It's not Edge of Tomorrow, is it? No.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah. I can never remember because they keep changing the title. And finally, on the sci-fi and horror front, Ridley Scott still has hopes to do the Alien prequel, like the third one, and complete the trilogy. I haven't seen Covenant yet. I've only seen Prometheus, and it was pretty okay. I'm going to watch it just to spite Devon.
I think you should watch it. I don't recommend it, but I think you should watch it.
Prometheus is the best TV pilot I've ever seen.
Does that even count as an alien film? There's no aliens in it. It's just something else.
It's something else. It's really good. The second episode makes me wish that they'd finished the pilot.
I really liked Prometheus, but purely because I didn't realise it was part of the Alien franchise when I bought it. So I bought it just thinking it was another sci-fi film by Ridley Scott. And I thought, that'll be cool. And then I put it in and was watching it. And I was like, what is going on? And then when they go into the ship, and I'm like, alien film. I don't know whether that sort of made me more excited about the film than it deserves, but the surprise was pleasant.
If for no other reason they coined that phrase on CinemaSins, the Prometheus school of running away from things, then that's enough.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, maybe we'll do a video looking at the Alien franchise in the future. A critical look at it.
I just want to, on the point of Doug Liman directing the Tom Cruise in space film, I think that's a very interesting choice because Doug Liman he's notorious for his productions being very messy and all over the place, and then he does a lot of reshoots and a lot of kind of weird editing and then finds the film in post. Mr. and Mrs. Smith was absolutely like that. Born Identity was like that. Edge of Tomorrow was like that. And still in the post-production room, Chaos Walking is absolutely going to be like that. So the fact they've chosen him for a film which probably won't get opportunity for reshoots, it's an interesting choice.
You're just going to have to call Elon can we go back up?
Yeah.
If someone were to tell me this like 5 years ago that Elon Musk and Tom Cruise would be the ones to do this, it really wouldn't surprise me. I think these are just like two men that need to do things that are completely impractical to sort of like immortalize their status in this industry that they did something.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be worth it. You can just tell. But anyway, main event. So we're going to be talking about summer blockbusters, which is why I said 40 minutes ago. But it's even more true now because we are. So just quick history lesson, I guess. The word blockbuster origins, which actually has like a really messy etymology, but originated in the 1940s around World War II when the Royal Air Force created a new bomb called the Blockbuster because it blew up blocks of cities at a time. And this is just a great word. I think it's one of those words that sort of like, what do you call it when it sounds like what it is?
English student.
Yeah, I know, this is really bad. It's because we're on a stream.
I know what you mean though. It's like
onomatopoeia.
Oh no, that's onomatopoeia.
Yeah. Yeah, and then sort of this started leaking into the media, that they describe something as a blockbuster if it's exciting. And it's eventually used in film context in Time magazine when they describe March to Moscow as a blockbuster, not for its style or like financial success, but because of its content that was very militaristic. And just keeps going on like this, eventually leading into financial success, which back then, to be called a blockbuster, you had to cross over the $2 million mark between your revenue in the US and Canada. And adjusted to inflation, that's about $17 million today, which absolutely is not a blockbuster by any means, you know. Yeah, and then it wasn't until 1975 when Steven Spielberg released Jaws in the summer that we sort of got the blockbuster genre, something high energy, highly entertaining, great word of mouth, and just made a shit ton of money. And that's really it, the genre, and it transcends into event films later on, which is what we get now. But what I want to ask you guys first is, what are your favorite summer blockbusters?
Who's gonna go first? Devon, you go first.
Me? Nolan's quite good at them. Nolan's quite good at, you know, Inception, Interstellar, Dark Knights. He's very good at. I feel a lot of summer blockbusters, they will sacrifice theme over accessibility, and I feel like Nolan is very good at finding the line of his films are saying something while being very entertaining, and he just kind of has a momentum to his films where it can be saying a lot of quite intellectual stuff and quite kind of thematically resonant stuff, but you don't get bored during that because there's also two other things going on in two other places and one of them's probably exploding.
Kat?
I do definitely agree with Devon that like the kind of the quality of the Nolan stuff, is up there because it's not just entertaining, it's also like fantastically like interesting and very rewatchable. And I think that's, I guess, a common thing with blockbusters is they are often things that, particularly the older ones that came out like the 80s, 90s, well, all of them, in fact. I was going to say all of those ones that are like classics, such as like the Jurassic Parks and the like Back to the Futures and things like that, where like Star Wars is, they're very like rewatchable and fan bases continuing throughout the decades. But I think my personal favorite, I guess, would probably be Back to the Future 2, just because I really, really like it. But that's not because it's like maybe like the best made blockbuster. It's just that it's like a personal kind of a favorite. That's what I would say.
Cool. I still haven't seen Back to the Future 2. It's really bad.
Have you seen the first one?
Yeah, I've seen the first one. I just haven't seen any of the sequels.
You should borrow my books.
Yeah, I'll let you guys go me later on. It's been on Netflix for like 2 years now. But
I think it's picked up recently, actually, because I was going to watch it and then I was going to watch it the other day.
Oh no, asleep at the wheel. Duncan?
Yeah, well, I completely agree that kind of quality is pretty key to a summer blockbuster film. Obviously, I mean, with those kind of things, it could just be like an opportunity to do like a Fast and Furious type thing, that it's just going to be a lot of explosions, a lot of catchy phrases, great actors. But no, quite a few of the best ones, they just don't cash in on that, which is amazing. Because I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean, definitely a favorite for that one. Jaws, obviously the original. Things like Star Wars, really things that kind of push the boat out, really. No pun intended with two of those, but yeah, they're just opportunity to kind of just try new things, but do it with good quality, with really good filmmakers, like Devon said with the Nolan ones, Dark Knight being another one. Yeah.
Do you have a personal favorite?
Oh God, out of all of them, just out of my own childhood nostalgia, I'll go for Pirates of the Caribbean, because I love how it could have just been like a straight up pirate film, as it was kind of going to be originally, with Orlando Bloom as the main character, but they just went with a totally like unconventional series of characters and acting choices. And the fact that it was all based off a ride and it still managed to make good is amazing. So definitely that one, yeah.
And the first one is so much longer than anyone remembers.
Yeah.
You like finish the first act and it's like, right guys, we're done. This is it. This is where I remember it ending.
I can't remember if I talked about this before on the show, but like we rewatched it with FilmSoc, and there's like a boat chase in that film. I had no recollection of like pirate ships chasing each other through, but yeah, apparently so.
Yeah. I think the only reason I remember it as well as I do, it's because when you're a kid, you usually have that one film you just want to watch all the time, like any time of day, any day of the week. I think that was that for me. I think I've just seen that film a million times.
Oh god, I've got one too. But oh wait, Angus?
Yeah, definitely. I think that sort of like Steven Spielberg and Summer Blockbuster go hand in hand right from the beginning. He sort of created what we know as the Summer Blockbuster with Jaws, all the way up to like Ready Player One. I feel like he's just like Indiana Jones, and he's got loads in there, some really great sort of hits, and is sort of very consistently good. Like, with the Steven Spielberg film, you're getting sort of good quality. I'm going to go with sort of a double bill, because they came out in the same year, but it was in 2014. The superhero genre had taken off and was about at the peak of its escalation. People wanted it to never end. There was no fatigue of superheroes at the time. So the t-shirt I'm wearing, Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, I thought that was just such an incredible sort of summer film. It's not necessarily the best film in the Marvel franchise, but it is just an incredible summer film. And X-Men Days of Future Past.
Oh yeah, that's great. I love Days of Future. It was something I wasn't expecting to be good, because I hadn't seen First Class. It had been a while since I watched X-Men. Yeah, I know. I didn't know they'd done this whole prequel thing, like beside Origins at the time. But yeah, no, those are great choices. George?
This is actually really difficult, because like when you asked for like our favorite blockbuster, I just Googled it, and these movies came out around that time, and I was like, this is going to be awful. Limit it down to one, but stuff like Inception, that's like brilliant. But I think I'll go with Terminator 2.
That's good.
But he's just like James Cameron is a game, and like arguably it's the best sequel of all time. Probably just hurt a lot.
Yeah, arguably.
Definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fun and rewatchable. It works.
Great. I guess for me, the first time I sort of remember getting hyped up about a film, or films rather, was about 2004, The Incredibles. I think that was the first time I went to go and see a film twice or more than once in cinemas. Like, I really needed to see that film again. It was so good. 4-year-old me loved it. I still love it. And the other one is Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, which is another one, like, because I think it was Duncan was saying, like, it's one of those films that, those films that you just need to keep rewatching as a kid. That was Scooby-Doo 2 for me. Except the scenes that were too scary for me. Flick on. But no, it was great. Also, like, it's kind of weird. Revenge of the Sith, when it came out in 2005, I was much too young to go and see it. Like, legally, I wouldn't be allowed to if a parent or whatever. But I think it's one of the first films I remember everybody talking about, like at school and stuff. And maybe you go out and you like play Star Wars non-end, because all you're seeing are these posters everywhere, and you're hearing like bits and pieces of what happens in the film, and you're getting it all together. Did we lose him? We lost George.
Oh
Okay.
no! I'm sure I'll come back.
Oh well, yeah. Hopefully, I'll be back. Yeah.
I think it's like a good point actually, because I didn't think of that. Am I thinking? Hi, George is back. Yay.
Yeah, my internet just exploded.
I think just really quickly, like you made me think about like what the first memory of having a Blockbuster was, because like or watching one was, because like I went to the cinema loads as a kid because we had the kids club pass like for Odeon, so we used to go quite a lot. But the first Blockbuster I remember like being like everyone's seen it, everyone was talking about it. It wasn't actually for me the Star Wars versus the sister. It was Avatar. Like definitely Avatar. Everybody was talking about it. Everyone had seen it. It was like the thing in about when I was like 9.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite sweet.
I'm old.
You really are, Devon. Come on.
When I was at school, I think it was Hunger Games was the one everyone had watched.
Yeah, that was like high schoolish time.
Yeah.
I really distinctly remember. So I think for my 6th birthday, my parents got me the box set of the Indiana Jones films, and we had no idea that Indiana Jones 4. We had no idea that Indiana Jones 4 was going to be a thing. But I was obsessed with the Indiana Jones films when I was younger. And then when they released Indiana Jones 4, it was like the biggest thing, and none of my friends knew what it was. But my dad and I went to see it. I just remember that being like a real sort of, that was a treat. It was like the summer, and got to go and see Indiana Jones. So it wasn't a great film, but 9-year-old me thought it was the best.
Yeah, same actually. I have strong memories of
just PTSD of Shia LaBeouf swinging with monkeys.
It's funny you bring up Avatar. I remember like Avatar, the trailer came out around the same time I was like really getting into YouTube, and I saw the trailer on the front page of YouTube, and I actually my dad saw it, and he kind of showed it to me and was like, "This is going to be huge. This is going to be just a ridiculous film." And I was like, "Yep, yeah."
I agree.
And then like I would watch the trailer every few weeks, kind of really, really excited from the first time I saw it all the way up to release. And then I remember, like, even though I'd seen the trailer so many times, when I watched the film, when they destroy the big tree in like the middle of the film, it's a very climactic moment, and I was like, this is the end of the film. This is definitely the end of the film. And then there's like another hour.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just completely caught me off guard when I was first watching it.
It reminds you of like when you're a kid and you're watching TV shows, particularly TV shows more so than films, but you're watching them and like the heroes encounter something and you're like, I cannot figure out how they're going to get past this. Like I'll be watching Avatar, and like every few the Last Airbender, and every few episodes they like get to a point where I remember as a kid thinking, I don't know what they're going to do. Like this is the end. And it's just sweet how like you like, I don't know, you're like, what? This is so climactic, when it wasn't even the climax of the movie.
There must have been, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say there must have been so many kids who fully believed that half of the Marvel characters were dead after Infinity War. Like, wholeheartedly.
Oh.
And like, there must have been parents like saying, no, I'm sure they'll fix it. And the kids are like,
while they're also in tears, like, oh no, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Well, there were fully grown adults who went into therapy because of it.
Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure some people almost died because of it.
I just imagine like all these full-grown adults like going to therapy, and it's Chris Evans and like the little support groups every time.
Honestly, that was just like my experience of Infinity, where it was like when Spider-Man dies and all the kids around me start crying, and it's just like, I've got to be strong for the kids.
I was just really smiling at everyone's misery. I was just really happy of everybody being sad. I was like, yes.
What were you going to say, Duncan?
I'm not sure I can follow that. I was going to say, kind of with suspend and disbelief, as I think we were talking about before, that somehow every time there's a Doctor Who cliffhanger, somehow every kid would just forget that he can just literally bring himself back to life every 4 years, and just God, he's going to die.
Yeah, when 10 regenerates, you're like,
God, yeah.
oh, it's like the end of
That
the
just-
world.
Yeah,
Like,
10
it's
years
so
old, that just killed me.
judgmental as a child as well for when the new one comes, and you like
Mm.
instantly make an opinion about them based on like a
Mm.
few minutes of seeing them, and you're like, I don't
Yeah.
like him, or you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember being really sad that David Tennant died, but I also remember Matt Smith making a pretty good first impression as well.
He did make a
That's my first
great
one,
one,
yeah.
There was spoilers for series 4 of New Who, if anyone's listening.
Mm.
But the just for like 60 seconds, skip ahead. There's the moment where it's in the end of the series 4 where David Tennant gets shot by a Dalek,
Yeah.
and then he regenerates, and then that's the end of the episode. And I remember the writers talking about how, yeah, we needed an end for this episode, and we like wanted it to be quite big, and we thought like, oh, how about this, and then we can just resolve it.
Mm.
And the entirety of England lost it. There was like people trying to hack into the BBC to figure out who the next Doctor was, and like rumours everywhere, and it was just ridiculous.
Devon, I can't believe you just spoiled a show which came out 12 years ago.
I did a spoiler warning because I know that Alex is going through them, and I don't know where she is. So
I think
Aw.
she's past series 4 by now.
okay, well that's
Season
fine.
3 was the one that kind of got me. Just the end of Utopia, the episode Utopia just ends with new bad guy. He steals the TARDIS and locks like 3 important characters in a room to die, and they don't. And the next time thing, the trailer that follows, doesn't have David Tennant in it at all. Like, for all I knew, as a 7-year-old, he was just dead. Yeah.
Anyway, Blockbusters.
Enough of these Doctor Who's.
Yeah. I'll just make a new episode right now. Yeah. So I guess the other thing I wanted to ask was, over the years, do you think the tone and feel of summer blockbusters have changed? Like from when you were a kid watching one to one now, do you think like the style of what a blockbuster is like has been changed over? Like, Kat, you're nodding, you're saying no. Why?
I'm shaking. Yeah, I'm shaking my head because my immediate reaction to that is like no, because then but I thought about it and I was like, well, I'm sort of like my immediate reaction being no, simply because of the fact that like when you compare them, they have like pretty much all the same ingredients. Like in terms of like the genre is pretty much always action, and it's always got A-list actors in it. It's always got this and this. It's always got this like same formula that like film has got such variety and such different like styles of doing things, narratively speaking, and like genre speaking, cinematographically, anything you can think of. It's so varied. Yet blockbusters aren't really. Even if you like think about, say, I'm trying to think of like a good example of one that's like not really like a superhero movie and isn't really sci-fi, but is like
Jules.
Mission
yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
I guess that would kind of sort of count. And like the stuff where it's like not E.T. because that's sci-fi, but do you know what
Fast and
I'm driving
Furious.
at?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, but even
was
still,
Goonies one. I feel like it should have been.
this is kind of what I'm driving at, because even though I'm saying like, oh, there are those slightly different ones, it's like you all said like slightly different things, but they're all similar in their ways. So like, and maybe it's a bit unfair to say, well, of course they're going to be similar. If you know something works, you're going to keep doing it. But so perhaps it's unfair to say like they're all similar. But my experience of going and seeing a blockbuster film, I feel like hasn't really like changed. Even though I'm older and like I've watched them like maybe a bit differently to how I did, well, obviously differently to how I did when I was like 9, 10. You're still getting the same experience in terms of like the pleasures that it's kind of giving you, like in terms of like watching experience. So my initial reaction to that is no, I don't think they've changed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like they have changed slightly, but so much so that like I feel like our generation won't have noticed it, because sort of if you look at the sort of films that were blockbusters in sort of the 80s and the 90s, and the sort of blockbusters that we have today they're all franchises. So like Avengers Endgame is one of the most successful films of all time, but if you haven't seen the 20 films before it, then it's going to make absolutely no sense at all. Whereas like back in the day, you've got sort of very much more like one-off blockbusters at the time, sort of like, you know, the original Star Wars, the first Indiana Jones film, or the, you know, first Back to the Future, which all turned into sort of trilogies and that. But they felt very much like their own individual product. And I mean, you still get that today with I don't know, things like The Meg, and you get like
Yeah.
the odd
Great
creature
example.
or something like that. But like it is very much like if you haven't seen the like past 8 films in the Fast and Furious franchise, you're not, and if you've seen the first film in the Fast and Furious franchise and the most recent one, you're going to have no idea how they got from A to B.
That was me. I was very lost.
I mean,
Like, what I don't understand about that though is the fact that like how if a film is the highest grossing film at any given time, if it's a franchise, so it's like the later version of it, so there are things that came before it that you should understand or have to understand to like get it. Why is it the highest? You see, there must be people that haven't seen those previous movies.
I mean, I kind of disagree with Angus about the Fast and Furious thing because I've only seen Fast and Furious 8, and I got the plot because it was just people driving around in cars talking about family for like 2 hours.
On Kat's point, there was a lot of people online before Endgame came out who said this is going to make a lot of money, but there's no way it can make more than Infinity War because it is such a kind of direct sequel that people who haven't seen Infinity War just won't see it. So there is an inherent market cap. But I think that the accessibility of films has become a lot greater in not even just the accessibility of the films, but the accessibility of the consumption of films. And that's not necessarily watching a film, but that might be watching a CinemaSins video, which basically tells you the plot in 10 minutes while making jokes, or a kind of recap explained video on YouTube, or like a podcast, which is doing kind of recaps of the Marvel films. And I think that, and so you've got that side of it. And then you've also got the cinematic universe kind of aspect, which is very cleverly designed in that, you know, Fast and Furious, there's no real entry points. You can go and see Fast and Furious 8 and you kind of, you'll probably know what's going on. But the Marvel Universe is very carefully constructed so that every couple of films, there's a very clear entry point where you could have never seen another Marvel film and you go and see Black Panther because you want to see Black Panther, and then you've seen Black Panther, so you're like, well, I've seen Black Panther and he's in Captain America Civil War, so I can see Civil War. And then you're kind of, it's all a process of funneling these origin films into a central core, which introduces you to enough characters that you can then be invested in the universe as a whole.
I kind of think that following on from that, that quite a few kind of summer blockbusters have kind of just a kind of watered down approach to what Spielberg did, because Spielberg films, and Cap was right what you said earlier, they definitely had a type. They were a lot more kind of, I don't know, I suppose edgier than some of them are now. Like, I mean, Goonies, for example, I mean, it had all kinds of weeds. I've had kids making dirty jokes and effing and blinding all over the place, but it was still considered a family film. Whereas now they'll kind of take all those elements and make sure that there's enough things to keep kids and adults entertained, but not enough that they'll get complaints in and they'll be able to get in as many as possible. Because I'm pretty sure in that regard, things are a lot more, like I said, watered down than they used to be. Yeah.
I think modern blockbusters are different to the sort of 70s and 80s ones in scale, and I think it's a technological thing. Like, obviously you didn't have that CGI, and now I think it's an overuse of CGI, and it just brings everything up. You can do more deconstruction, or destruction. It's like Man of Steel, the climax is just buildings being destroyed one after the other, but you wouldn't get that in sort of like these more traditional ones or earlier ones like Indiana Jones, where it was very much adventure driven.
Yeah,
I think, you know, and there's slower burners, I think, as well, like Alien and Aliens. Although Aliens is a lot more action packed, it's not like overly fast paced. But I think a lot more of the modern ones are. It's a bit more high octane as they go along. And I guess that's how I sort of think they've changed over time. But I don't know, maybe you guys will argue with me.
now that you say that, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I think
Michael Bay.
Yeah.
I sort of No, go on, Devon. Yeah.
No, you go first.
It was only just, well, you're definitely right with the fact that, like, it's hard to explain somehow. It's like, it's almost like a tonal, it's not tone, it's like themes. Because, like, it's the same kind of, like, themes of, like, family is often kind of one to one degree or another. And it's because there's not only, like, the sort of, George, you're sick of me. It's like,
I've had enough of your shit, Kat.
Exactly, I know. It's got like the action kinds of elements to it, but there's also like this, like, this like classic Hollywood narrative sort of thing of like the heroes and the mentors and there's all this stuff that nicely goes into it, and like we've all kind of discussed, but like I do think I know what you mean about the whole, like, it has changed since then, mostly because of what Angus said about the franchises, but also there are obviously lots and lots of standalone, really, really fantastically well made, like, well doing, I don't quite know what the word is, well received blockbusters like Inception, like a lot of Nolan stuff, I guess. And I know that, say, like The Dark Knight came from like previous like source material, but it's still obviously like does well on its own regard. So I do sort of agree with you, but I don't quite know how to, like, what exactly it is about them that's different, really. Do you think you have, like, what do you, like, think is the reason that you think that they're different, Peter?
I think they're shot differently as well. But you get that because they are more action driven, you know. I think, I don't know, I can't really get very technical when it comes to film. I don't do enough production or theory stuff to talk about it.
Yeah. You just think that it's like lots of different things that are different. It's not just sort of one thing that you can describe.
Yeah, and I think especially once they're sort of set on Earth, I think tend to have like a grayer color palette. Like, I know this is a recurring thing with the Marvel films, but I think it's true in these early DC ones, and like Transformers as well. You know, it's just very sort of I think it's more grounded in that sense and how it's shot in this, and like how everything is framed. It's made to make you feel like this is your city and we're just going to blow it all up. You know, but it's not like the early ones where it's like Jaws or E.T., where it's just like, oh, a small suburban town. Or that's a classic one in the 80s, especially with things like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Sort of like white suburbia. Is a classic setting. And it makes the film feel smaller in that sense, while still having like big threat. Like Jaws is killing people, and you've got America who's not listening, but it's very self-contained in this coastal town, and it's only really going to be a problem for the summer while like people are there to go on the beach or surf or whatever, because, you know, by the time autumn comes, it's, you know, no one's going to go into the water anyway. So I think it's more, I don't know, more world ending as well.
I think you're onto something with the self-contained aspect of them, because excluding the idea of like it being part of a franchise or something, I do think you're right that there's obviously like this kind of the stakes are personal, but they have to be large at the same time. Like there's usually like a love interest or a person you're protecting, like the main character, something along those kinds of lines. But there is also has to be an element of like scale to which it's not just one person that will be affected by this thing. It's always, and I think if you go too far with it, like you have sort of movies like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but do you remember there's that 80s movie that, I think it's an 80s movie anyway.
That 80s movie?
No, it's the one that like, I see, this is terrible that I can't think of the name, but it's this one, I think it's got Elijah Wood as a kid in it. And like, there's, you're all like...
as far as I'm concerned, Elijah Wood will always be a kid.
That's cute. He does have a very big baby face. Aww. But anyway, I'm not going to try and think of the movie, but I think there's some movies that certainly in terms of like, and I guess this is personal preference though, but like, I think the blockbusters that end up having such a cult following, or at least have a lot of rewatch ability to them in terms of like the ones that everybody thinks of as like the classics and stuff like that, do have this like element of, it's got a large amount of scale in that there's lots high stakes, but there's also individual people, but it's not too high stakes that it's like the whole world is going to I know that a lot of them, it is high stakes in that regard. So things like the Avengers movies and things like that, I totally understand that they do well in them themselves. But I think the ones that are more kind of like the older ones that are more memorable are the ones that don't have as big stakes somehow. But perhaps I'm wrong though, because there are lots that are like the end of the world if this person doesn't do this thing. So
yeah, it's
I think,
oh, sorry, Angus, go.
like, going back to what you're saying about like the style of it, like, I think that what we've seen noticeably is more teal and orange is the color palette of the modern blockbuster. If you look at any movie poster from like Transformers to, I mean, Captain America, like the dominant color is teal and orange, and that is because explosions against the sky. And it's sort of, they're very sort of nice contrasting colors that like fit together very well. So like sky and explosions, or sea and explosions, or something like that. It's like something about those two colors seems to make its way into almost every action film that wants to be a blockbuster these days. Or, you know, thinking like Pacific Rim Uprising as one of those examples of a film that is just the end of the world. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm driving at. Yeah.
Like, those sorts of films definitely, they have like that style that is just sort of all you can really remember is big things against a blue sky and lots of orange explosions.
It's like oh, sorry, no, you go, Duncan.
I think that kind of at the minute, one thing that's kind of improved really is that in the past it was kind of practical effects, and which now would kind of look a bit crude maybe, but amazing storylines for great characterizations. Whereas on the other hand, if they tried to do something with it, well, at the time would have been like revolutionary effects. It could just be almost scenery porn really for like 2 hours. Like you've got like Star Trek, the motion picture. When that came out, it came out just after 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it was almost just 2 hours of slow panning shots of a CGI spaceship going through a warp thing. So, but now at the minute you've got things like the Avengers films, and while you occasionally have things like a Michael Bay film, I'm pretty sure at the minute they're at least starting to kind of strike a good balance there, really, ever since Avatar.
Yeah. Sorry, Devon, maybe.
Okay. I think the main way they've changed is that they're scared. They're scared to break the mold, and they're scared of risk, because the thing that has been happening with blockbusters, particularly over the last 10, 20 years, is that they're getting more expensive and more expensive. It used to be that a film could cost like 100 million, and that was like a big film. Nowadays it's up to 200, 250, 300 million for Solo and Justice League. Those are the kind of budgets which we're getting at. And if a film fails, it fails spectacularly. You know, people will lose their jobs, people will lose a lot of money, because there's no more mid-budget film. You know, that you've got your indies which are under 50 million, or you've got your 200 million blockbuster, and there's no in between. And it's that fear is meaning they're going through a process of risk mitigation, and it's kind of very carefully doing some things so that it is fully accessible and there's no risk. And part of that is, like you mentioned, the stakes, in that they've got to make sure that you care about the kind of the stakes of the film. So they can't have, you know, a Whiplash where the stakes are a guy's drumming career. Because if you don't care about the drumming career, then you don't care about that film. So all the films, they've got end of the world plus a romantic subplot plus a personal kind of plot too, because at least the audience will care about one of them. And the end of the world's the easy one because people care about the world. And the love interest, it'll be like, yeah, they'll be like this person who's not very flawed and they're romantic. So, you know, hopefully that works out too. And all that. So it's kind of trying to get everything. You've also got the genre mashing thing of kind of action films are very popular, comedies are very popular, sci-fis are very popular. Almost every blockbuster now is action, comedy, sci-fi, like across the board. Even like you go back to The Dark Knight and you forget how much humor there is in The Dark Knight and Inception stuff, just because there always has to be the wisecrack, just because somebody will be there for the wisecracks. Somebody will be there, and they just kind of want to laugh and have a good time, and they don't really care about the rest. So you've got to have the jokes. And the way that the jokes are implemented has also changed. This, particularly in the last 10 years, I've noticed this. If you look at the progression of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, films are scared to be sincere nowadays. They don't want to kind of keep that emotional beat going for too long, because if the person doesn't buy the emotional beat, then they'll just kind of shrug it off, and the scene will fall flat. So in almost every blockbuster, especially in Marvel, and I think this is where Infinity War has some props in that they didn't do this, is that if ever there's a sad moment, it's ended with a punchline. You know, something happens that's a bit funny, a bit like, oh, ha, ha. And there's a word for it beginning with B, and I can't remember now. I should have Googled. But yeah, there's a word. What was that?
Bathos, isn't it?
Bathos, yes.
Yeah.
Which is...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Which is kind of... And it's not just the bathos, but it's like the film has... There's like this ironic self-awareness to films nowadays.
Yeah.
In that you get it, especially with Fast and Furious, especially with Marvel, especially with like stuff like even Mission Impossible to a degree, where films are scared to like, they're scared that you'll be making fun of them, so they make fun of themselves, and they're always like trying to make fun of, yeah, Thor is going through this really dark time at the moment, but you know, he's a bit fat and he's playing video games on Fortnite, so you know, we get it, we're making fun of ourselves, making fun of him, and it's like films, they're really scared to kind of hold a genuine moment of like emotion, because it might fall flat for someone, and that's alienating someone. And the most recent like development in, sorry, I'm going on a very big rant, this very recent moment in kind of this mitigation of risk, which I've noticed, especially, I feel like this only happened in the last 4 or 5 years, is that films are now getting scared to make flawed characters, because flawed characters will sort of alienate people from empathizing with that character. And you know, some people hate Iron Man, some people hate Star-Lord, some people hate those flawed characters, and filmmakers have caught on and they've been like, well, we can't really have characters with deep flaws because it's alienating people, and we just can't have that risk. So we've got like Captain America was like a while ago, but now I've got characters like Black Panther and Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman to a degree. All these characters are really kind of, their arc isn't one of personal growth, it's one of external change, and it's so that people, you know, you can't not like Wonder Woman, you can't not like Black Panther, you can't, there's nothing that you really can't like about them, and it's so that risk mitigation, because budgets are only going to go up. And that's my rant.
I think it's kind of the opposite almost with TV, really, because so many TV shows kind of for ages have just been kind of things like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, even, you know, Rick and Morty, Sopranos, Mad Men. They're just all about these programs with these really deep kind of flawed individuals, and they hammer home how deeply flawed these people are. So you can kind of learn that these aren't people to, you know, be aspire to. Whereas
I can virtually not think of any show where they don't, not exactly maybe romanticize the person perhaps, but yeah, like, and not even maybe glorify, but they like have that character being a main person, and they also have to be quite flawed. I can barely think of any adult shows that don't have that.
And
Yeah.
it's because TV is a very different space, where in the movie you're trying to get the masses, in the TV you're trying to get the loyal niche. Because all you need is enough people to watch the next episode and the next episode and the next episode.
Yeah.
And that's why streaming kicked off with TV rather than movies, because streaming is also trying to get the niche.
I kind of thought for a while there that I almost thought for a while that the opposite of what you said, Devon, because especially with DC films, for example, when they made Man of Steel and continued that into Batman vs Superman, they always seemed scared to show a superhero who was just doing the right thing because it was the right thing to do. Like he had to have, you know, caused someone to die or had some horrible tragedy in his life that kind of forced them into doing it. They almost seemed to think it was kind of ridiculous to show someone just doing the right thing.
Well, and those particular two DC films, alongside The Last Jedi, are very interesting situations where a kind of auteur filmmaker has taken over this blockbuster and they've made a very kind of risky film. And you can see from the fallout of those three films that they alienated a lot of people and they were very risky, and you can argue all of their qualities. But you look at then Rise of Skywalker and Justice League, which were the studio reactions to those risky films, and they hit every beat of those. They're self-aware, comedic, with unflawed characters, genre massing, self-awareness. They've got them all.
Action sci-fi.
Yeah.
Do you think that, like, because I don't know whether this is just because, like, this is the climate we're in at the moment, but do you think that there are more people who are having their voices heard about films, and therefore, like, the studios and that are listening more with things like the internet and Reddit and stuff like that, where basically people go and complain, and there's not a lot of, like, great feedback? Like, the only place where people really praise films is on websites like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that, whereas mostly people go on the internet and just complain. So I think that often, I don't know if this is the same with you guys, what you think, but do you think that there's sort of an unbalanced voice of people complaining to the, like, praise that people are giving it, but not sharing on the internet?
For my immediate answer to that would be, like, if you'd have asked me that before I got Twitter, I would have said absolutely, completely negative all the time, pretty much. Facebook and Instagram particularly, and, like, I don't go on Reddit, so I don't really know. And, like, those, like, for me, my answer would have been pretty much yes. Wasn't really a huge, like, movie review person. I didn't really read them and stuff. But when I got Twitter, and I, like, only followed very small, like, numbers of people, like 20-ish people along those sorts of lines, and they were all, like, film or personal. It's, like, very, very, very positive. Like, it's brutal in its way, because, like, everyone knows film Twitter is, like, insane, but it's also, like, I would say very, very, very positive. But I know what you mean, because there aren't really proper structures in place for people to, like, for, say, like, directors and producers to, like, hear what everyone says. Like, I understand how it works with things like streaming sites, because, like, they just log what you watch, and then they're like, so a lot of people like this, a lot of people didn't like this, blah blah blah. But, like, there isn't really, unless maybe there is, that I don't know about. So my answer to that would be, like, I do think it is more neutral if you're quite immersed in, like, film kind of reviewing and sort of like that kind of thing, if you're very, very, like, interested in it. But if you're kind of, like, more of a casual viewer, or, like, someone that might read a bit about it because you are interested in, like, blockbusters, that sort of thing, you're watching
the majority of this audience.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like, the more mainstream audiences, yes, are seeing much more negative, or, like, contributing much more negative things than the people who are sort of maybe more like film oriented, in terms of, like, I don't want to say buffs, but because I wouldn't describe, I don't know, but yeah.
I think that kind of. Sorry.
There you go first.
I think that's kind of the same for TV as well, really. I mean, kind of the last series of Game of Thrones is basically like a study in listening to the fans too much. So I think that maybe that'll be happening less and less now as a result of that, because I know some TV shows and, like, I don't know, say Rick and Morty, things like that, they've just now seen what's happened with Game of Thrones and how poorly that was received from just, catering to the fan base, and how quickly the fans can kind of turn on them for making that go wrong. I have a feeling that, or at least I hope, that a lot of creators will be just kind of going their own way with their own visions now, kind of almost kind of shutting off what their fans are telling them to do.
I was going to say, Angus, I completely agree with you. I think that part of that fear is hearing the loud majority online and reacting to it. And you just look at the Disney Star Wars they release Force Awakens, and everyone's like, this is too similar to A New Hope. So they put Last Jedi into production. They release Rogue One, and everyone's like, these are dumb characters. So they put Solo into production. They release Last Jedi, and everyone's like, hey, this is way too subversive. We want Star Wars. So they put Rise of Skywalker into production. Solo comes out, and everyone's like, no, we don't want this. So they cancel Kenobi and Boba Fett. And it's like, if they're so reactionary. And Warner too, like you look at the exact way they've, treated Snyder. Batman vs Superman comes out and everyone's like, hey, we don't like Snyder. So they changed Justice League, and then Justice League comes out and we're like, no, we want Snyder Cut. So it's Snyder Cut. And I keep saying everyone, it's not everyone, it's the loudest. It's always the loudest. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I think like the problem that we have with this sort of thing, and it's more of a problem now because there's such a big platform for it on social media, but it's been a problem since forever, is that the audience that these films are geared towards, the kids and family, go unheard a lot of the time. You hear like, we talked about near the start of the show about Revenge of the Sith being one of the first sort of like blockbuster films. I remember everybody talking about it in the playground and all, and we all loved it. And meanwhile, like George Lucas is getting like bashed into depression by these like fanboys that remembered, these other films from the 80s and late 70s and all. And it's just sort of like, it makes me wish like more kids had the chance just to sort of tell like how much they love these films or how much they enjoy this. Because you're getting this with the new Star Wars as well. Like, little girls dressing up as Rey, excited to go and see the new film. And like as much, that's as much of an important voice in this as anybody else's, but it continues to go unheard because they're sort of like too young to have a platform for that.
I think it's Sorry, no, Duncan, you go.
No, you go ahead.
Mine's only it's only quick. It's just that like I think it's like fantastic how much it's double-edged sword, as is anything when it comes to like hearing reviews and things like that, isn't it? Because like I think it's so fantastic how much more knowledge there is about like how to represent people, and how much more conversation there is about like, say, the way women are written or the way LGBT people are written and things like that. Like that's so fantastic, and I think a massive part of that is the ability to see so much awareness about it on social media. That was all I was going to say, but yeah. Duncan.
I was going to kind of say this kind of, just kind of the fact that some of these films are kind of, people seem to forget that, and I'm not naming names here, Devon, that things like Star Wars are originally made with kids in mind, really. So you could kind of argue that kind of analysing them like, well, it would almost be a moot point. But then again, since they're kind of so far-reaching and far-stretching, that's kind of heartening to see these kind of very powerful, very interesting, intelligent characters kind of being emulated, especially with girls, kind of like Rey. And kind of far cry than when they only had characters like Princess Leia to kind of look at, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Peter, I was going to ask you, because I feel like a lot of young people do have the internet, but I feel like the problem is that they're quite impressionable, and that if people on the internet, like if they go on YouTube and there's a YouTube video coming up in the recommended, which I always get, which is like The Last Jedi was a complete cinematic disaster, and it's got Holdo's face on it. I feel like if I was a young kid during that time and I saw all these people saying this film's bad, I would probably believe them, just because I feel like that's what kids do, and I feel like it's more of a problem with online than with the online space than it is kids having access to the online space. But I don't know. Do you agree with?
I think so, because I remember growing up, certainly friends that are getting into films or whatever, or this sort of thing. It's I think it creates the impression that there's a wrong opinion, which is really unhealthy when you're going into film. To feel like you're going to be judged if you like this film, or you dislike that film. And I suppose that's part of the social media platform as well, and how it's affecting how films are being made, as well, if it's influencing younger generations. But anyway, I think that's still part of the problem of mitigating people's voices, because you're sort of peer pressuring them to sort of think or say these sort of things. So it's not an authentic impression of what they might actually like or dislike. It's an impression they got from somebody else, an older fan who has this sort of rage or whatever, towards a certain franchise. I say rage, I'm sure there's some that like love it that kids hate or whatever, but in recent years, it's rage. So
I suppose it's the impressionability of teenagers generally, though, isn't it? It's kind of like they are impressionable as they are. Like you get like your more, well, that's a bit elitist. I was going to say you get your more kind of formed opinions as you sort of go beyond the teenager years and you start to get into your 20s, but that is very elitist. So,
No, I think it's part of maturity. I think it's part of like you're sort of more comfortable with yourself and what you think. And I think you're able to sort of develop opinions that sort of represent who you are when you're watching a film.
Yeah.
But it's like George Lucas said. He said it very famously in his interview. My films are for 12-year-olds. If other people want to enjoy them, that's fine.
Aww. Yeah, that's a good attitude to have.
That's a great defense of the prequels.
Yeah.
And this is from someone who loves the prequel, actually likes the prequels.
Yeah.
I like how you corrected loves to likes the prequel there, Duncan.
Duncan, don't feel peer pressured.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Phantom Menace was the first ever Star Wars film I saw, and I still love it.
Aw, that's nice.
Kind of.
I suppose this is a good segue talking about something that's maybe a little bit more critically divisive. And that's if the Blockbuster reputation is fair or if they have artistic value as well, which Devon touched on. Well, he did more than touch on, he did quite a bit. Well done, Devon. But we'll take from what Devon said and sort of move it here.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there is still a place for like those mid-budget films, like sort of budgets that you used to be able to make a blockbuster on that you don't really see nowadays? Like, I feel like there is very much the film industry's themes appears to be like pushing in two separate directions, where you've got very much your sort of the Hollywood film that everybody goes to see because it's like the big Hollywood film at the time, and then you've also got sort of the festival films or the Oscar films that are like, people who are into film will go and see, or if it's a genre that if you're not really interested in like the blockbuster genre, it's something that like you are going to be more interested in seeing, sort of the dramas, the biopics and things like that. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's sort of this push against them, but I think what people aren't realizing is because like what the blockbusters we're seeing are making up a majority of sort of what's popular, it's very much the same genres, which is forcing a lot of other genres which can be just as good to have smaller budgets or to be perceived to be sort of, oh, that's not for me, I'm not going to bother seeing that one.
I think did you just remind me of the fact that like in my film theory class that I used to do, we had like a lecturer who was very anti Marvel movies, which you can, I mean, of course, you know what I mean? Like she runs
Wow.
but like I'm obviously gonna not drop, of course not, but like I it's funny because on the argument of like whether it is art and stuff like that, I think that Angus makes a good point about these sort of like they're not blockbusters by no stretch. Like we're talking about maybe your Wes Anderson-y stuff, your Quentin Tarantino. I don't know. I mean, maybe they count. Anyway, that's like, I guess we could talk about that in a minute. But like, for example, I had to do an essay. I was doing one on like feminism, and we had to compare a avant-garde movie to a mainstream movie, and she described Portrait of a Lady on Fire as being a mainstream movie, and which is always incredibly interesting to me because like I do see where you're coming from in the fact that like it wins awards, so it's considered mainstream. And like when my film teacher told me that in like A level, that like a mainstream movie is one that has been like nominated, is something that's been nominated for stuff, or like it's just very widely known. Like if you're gonna like consider it as something, I just think it's very interesting, this kind of like dynamic of like what is a mainstream, because I would by no means call Portrait of a Lady on Fire a mainstream movie in terms of like what I consider one to be.
That would be defining mainstream as successful.
Yes, I suppose that's true. Yeah, and again, is that I don't know. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with this. Like, I guess
Kind of
my
what
point.
people,
No, go on,
sorry.
Duncan.
It's kind of that argument seems to be what people kind of consider as art, really, at the cinema. Like, I mean, Portrait of a Lady on Fire is, I guess, even inarguably, just really an artistic film, like really layered, really brilliantly technically put together. But compare it to something like kind of the Avengers films, which even kind of Martin Scorsese, whose opinion on film is almost kind of law for a lot of people, comes in and says this isn't even art, this is barely even cinema, then definitely that's definitely going to almost create a kind of almost elitist almost look at film, really, like things that, but like you said, Kat, things like things that are almost just as popular as a blockbuster, but not as populist, I suppose, for
Maybe, like,
want of a better
critically,
word.
not
Things like
critically
Wes
reviewed
Anderson,
either.
yeah,
Yes, stuff that like has a
like
really
Tarantino.
cult or niche following, like what Devon talked about with like TV shows and stuff.
Mhm.
But they're not niche as such. Like, they obviously get big, wide cinematic releases. We're not talking like documentaries often and like stuff that is very, or maybe like niche animations, things like that. We're not talking that kind of thing. We're talking this sort of very large middle ground between your not cinema releases and not nominated for anything and not whatever, and then your blockbusters that are like up here where it's like this crazy. But I think my personal take on it is you're right to say that like it's elitist. Well, in my opinion, it's elitist to say, oh, this form of this is art, this isn't. Like, I always hate that idea that, but I do think there is something to be said for like there are. But then again, you're straying into dangerous territory, because I was going to say there are movies that are more artistic than others in terms of whatever that might be, whether that's like set design or cinematographic construction or editing or performances. There might be things that are more like artistic in that degree, but then like just, so what would be the least artistic movie then? Does that count as an artistic thing if it's the least of this like massive pile of different movies, some of which are only made to make money, really? But they still have this resonance in that they have this like stakes that are personal and that have this like love interest. They're all things that relate to people. So yes, there are movies that are made just for money, but those are loved by people too. So why does that make it any less important than something that is incredibly artistic that maybe, you know, doesn't mean as much to that other person?
I guess if you can have a discussion that kind of argues the point to or for whether it's artistic, then that's kind of going to fly in the face of kind of elitism in one way or another, because there's no definitive opinion on these things. It's all, you know, relative, really.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I think like one of the, like, I think the perfect sort of example for that sort of balance somewhere between it's film and it's made relatively well, so you could argue it is art or it has vision behind it or something like that, but it's not trying to be but it's trying to be slightly more mainstream than, like, you know, just having a niche following, but it's not trying to be a big blockbuster or anything like that. And, you know, whether you like him or his films or not, but Adam Sandler has really, like, his films are exactly that. They have an audience. He just makes them like they are a very specific style of film. So you could argue it's semi-artistic in its genre and style, and it's like it's successful enough that it gains its audience, but it's never going to be like the biggest blockbuster or something like that.
In terms of physical art, like if we were looking at, say, like paintings and like physical things that you make that aren't like visual, in like it's like, say for example, you make an item of clothing, you're not going to sit there and say like this really, really colorful jumper or something like that, it's colorful and it makes me happy, like a, say, an Adam Sandler movie might. And then you're not going to like compare that with something like, say, a Renaissance painting, just because a Renaissance painting, like, some people might argue it's more technically proficient, but even then it's not. They're incomparable, you know what I mean? They give you two completely different pleasures. So is it really fair to compare them?
I think the phrase or the words artistic is inherently the problem here, because it is kind of made up of a lot of different things, and I feel like you can probably split it up more than this, but I feel like you can split it up into craft in how well something is made. You can split it up into kind of resonance in kind of how much it sticks with you, how it makes you feel, how much it moves you. And then you've also got how challenging it is. I feel like a kind of big aspect of a lot of what people would traditionally call very good art is stuff which is really sort of challenging, and really kind of goes against not necessarily societal norms, but kind of what you see and believe as a person. I feel like out of those, in terms of blockbusters specifically, blockbusters try not to be challenging. They really try and stay away from being challenging, and that's why the themes of every Marvel movie is be happy together. And any Marvel movie that tries to talk about a deeper subject, like Winter Soldier talking about kind of the government and surveillance stuff, or Civil War talking about kind of whether vigilantism should be a thing or whether there should be governmental oversight, or Black Panther talking about race relations. All of those aren't really discussed in the film. They're used sort of as a jumping off point to then have the super smashy bashy, because it can't challenge. So I feel like in that aspect, blockbusters really struggle. Resonantly, I mean, a lot of people were moved by Infinity War and Endgame. A lot of people were like moved by that a lot more than they would. I mean, I feel like more people were crying at A Lady on Fire than Parasite, and that's just sort of, maybe Parasite moved people in other ways, but I feel like resonance is so personal and so much about sort of not only who you are, but how you're attached to these people that are depicted on screen, that it's very difficult to define that, and blockbusters can be very resonant, or they can be not resonant at all, and they can probably be successful either way. And in terms of craft, I don't know, some are pretty, some are really mixed bag. Like, obviously we keep going back to Marvel because they're like the seminal blockbusters of this age. There's some, even just the CGI, there's some really amazing CGI in Marvel, and there's some really terrible CGI, and they're usually in the same film. I was there's this one clip that I rewatch occasionally. I just find it so funny. It's of in Infinity War, where Thor comes back and spoilers, he teleports to Earth, and then he like throws his hammer and it spins around. And it's really good CGI, and then there's this one shot of Mark Ruffalo in the Hulkbuster armor, and it looks like they've just like got a PowerPoint of his head and just put it in this like super amazing CGI suit, and he's just like bobbing along. It's so floaty, and it's just amazing and terrible CGI in the same shot. So yeah, I think they obviously have to have a certain level of craft, but I don't think they need to be exceptional. And I think even if they are, like, I feel Snyder shoots films beautifully. I feel like Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman are just works of art in terms of the frame, but they failed as blockbusters, or at least one was and then one quite dramatically didn't do well. So yeah.
I think the thing is, what defines a blockbuster is how entertaining it is, really. At the end of the day, is it an entertaining blockbuster? Because that's why people go and see a blockbuster, to be entertained. And people might enjoy going and seeing a more sort of, a deeper film with a more of a social commentary, or something that is going to have something very personal to it, or impactful. But really, a lot of people go to the cinema to be entertained for a couple of hours, really. So that's why blockbusters sort of do so well comparatively to other films. I'm not saying that other films don't do successfully. They can do very successfully, but as sort of the wider population of film goers are going to the cinema to be entertained, and that's why the blockbuster seems to have this it's sort of put on a pedestal. And it's not necessarily because it is better or worse than other genres, it's just more popular.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I wouldn't define it as. I think blockbusters are very much about the scale. I think that's kind of what defines them. I don't know. What do people think?
Well, this is quite interesting because, as I said at the start of the history lesson, like the blockbuster sort of changed for a while. Like in the beginning, it was about how well it did financially, and then I think when it came to Jaws, it became a bit more of a genre, rather than like, I don't know, like a line to cross. And I think right now we sort of have both, that sort of like, I think both are still existing, something that does really well. Like it, chapter 1 was made on like $15 million, but it made like,
25.
but made over like $700 million. And I'd consider that a blockbuster because that's a lot of money, and it's got that sort of word of mouth appeal to it. Like everybody was talking about it when it came out. And so I think it captured the sense of a blockbuster, even though it was a horror film.
I agree, totally.
Same with Deadpool, bit bigger budget, but it was sort of R-rated as well. It was in the February slot, which is so unusual at the time. We're going to talk about this in a second, actually. And again, unless you guys have anything else to add, now I do want to go into this.
Kind of following on what Devon said, if that's okay for a second.
Yeah.
Kind of the I guess that maybe some of the kind of improvements on CGI really in the last few years might be a detriment to some films, because I mean, I know we're anticipating a sequel to Avatar next year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, the main draw for Avatar was the fact that the CGI was so revolutionary and amazing. Like the film's almost kind of quite a bit of it was just completely CGI, whereas now they might kind of have to up their A game in other ways, really, because so many other films have used almost kind of better CGI in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I've said it quite a few times before, like, what Avatar did, like you said, it was make something revolutionary at the time. But this new one sort of, it's revolutionary, but is sort of the water physics around it in this water world, which Aquaman did a couple of years ago. And I think Devon mentioned that James Cameron helped develop that technology, but didn't get using it before James Wan created Aquaman. So I think I'm quite curious if that sort of film, especially that it's made over $1 billion already, will sort of hurt Avatar. And this isn't new. We've seen something like this before. Like, I'm not going to be bought in just by the special effects. I don't know. I think Avatar 2 will have to have a heavier reliance on an engaging story. I hated the story in Avatar. Or, I just don't remember it being very unique other than the special effects.
Hunters in space.
I think as well, you're right, I think, to say that maybe the technology can't be the only draw because it isn't the first of its kind in that way. But I suppose the other thing is that, like, 3D, I don't know, like, when Avatar was, like, being released and everything, if you didn't know exactly kind of, like, the fact that it was filmed in 3D and everything, you just kind of go into it thinking, like, this is a 3D movie kind of thing. That wasn't, like, explicitly new. I know it was new-ish, but, like, it wasn't the first of its kind. Do you know what I mean? Like, I still think people will be like, wow, I know that the original of this was, like, amazing. But I think you're right. There's going to be, like, different levels of it. Like, different audiences are going to view it in different ways. Like, I would view it as, like, I know this is going to be impressive technically. That's why I want to see it. That is probably the only thing drawing me in. It doesn't matter the fact that it's not the first of its kind to do it. But my opinion will be probably different to maybe even people on this show, so
do you guys think 3D is going to be a heavy part of its marketing? Because it's sort of become a retired concept. Like, not retired, obviously you can still go and see a blockbuster in 3D, but I think fewer and fewer people are doing that because it's so much more expensive. And, like, personally, I hate how it dulls the color palette. Like, it always really bugs me that everything's, like, slightly darker in 3D.
I think also it will be a struggle because what they basically need to say is, hey, we shot a film in 3D and it looked really good in 3D and everyone liked it in 3D. And then we had 10 years of people doing post conversions of 3D, which aren't as good. and that's why nobody likes 3D. But now we're doing it properly again, so it will look better than all the other 3D films. But there's no way they can convey that to the mainstream audience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that 3D has been ruined by this whole post-conversion process, which has been happening for the past 10 years. And I don't, unless there's a very obvious jump. I know he was trying to kind of do 3D without glasses. I have no idea whether that will happen or what. I don't know, but I know that was kind of one technology he was playing with. But I feel like if there isn't an obvious big step in the technology, it would just be another film. I don't think they'll be able to convey it any other way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they could do it through nostalgia, because it's what I remember in Avatar is just trying to catch like those jellyfish flowers. Like I think I spent most of my time, 9-year-old me, just trying to do that. I wasn't really paying attention. I don't know. Like they could do. This would be really expensive and probably not getting enough audience. But like if people go and see 3D films, put a 3D trailer in front of those films. If it's already being filmed in 3D, then you're not going to have to worry about doing the conversion costs for the marketing. You'll already have that, so it'll just be a matter of making up the trailer, and then everyone's like try to do like a word of mouth campaign around it of like, oh yes, we saw the trailer in 3D and it was brilliant. Like you have to go and watch it because the 3D is going to be like just like or even better than 2009's one.
And absolutely, easily, a month, 2 months before the release, we'll get Explore Pandora in VR.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Easily.
That's a good point. I
I
never
think-
thought of that.
Go on.
I just said I'd never thought of that. That's such a good idea.
No.
They've done it
I
quite
think-
recently. Oh, sorry, Angus.
Yeah, I think the thing with sort of like the whole 3D thing is like they used it initially to sort of like, this is new, we're going to develop it, it's going to be great. But then it was never really anything that was totally usable as a mode of storytelling necessarily. And so it just became a bit of a gimmick.
Yeah.
It was just a sort of an add-on. It didn't add anything to the story of the film or to the experience of it is heightened, but like no more than like going to see a film in 4DX or something like that where the seats move, where it doesn't add anything technically to the film other than your own personal experience. You could watch the film at home and the experience of the film would be very similar, but your memory of seeing it in cinemas with that experience is what makes the film so special at the time. Whereas now that's sort of been done and it doesn't add anything, so people are a little bit tired of it.
You guys remember when they re-released Phantom Menace in 3D?
Yeah.
I think I went to see it.
Yeah, I want to go and see it too. At the time, it looked like there weren't going to be any like new Star Wars films, so I thought this would be my chance to see a Star Wars film in cinemas. Yeah, but then I had loads of chances, so there we go. It didn't really add anything. I really don't remember there being much 3D at all in Phantom Menace. It felt really lackluster. I think that's the thing with a lot of these ones. Like a lot of times you go and see something in 3D and you're really not getting a lot of 3D. Like they'll put something at the start. Like I remember seeing Deathly Hallows Part 1 and then the like opening title sequence they have like the snake or basilisk or whatever like shoot out in front of the screen. And then like there's very little 3D throughout the rest of the film. You know, like it's sort of set in I suppose it's in certain places that can be animated easily in post or are already going to be animated in post. So you've got your title sequences will be in 3D, like throwing out actors' names and stuff. Because you can just sort of do that at the end. You don't have to sort of worry about like building it around practical things. And I think that can be very sort of debilitating if you're trying to make like a good 3D effect on it, which is something that Avatar had the advantage on, because not only did they film in 3D, but it was all going to be CGI anyway. So it's easy enough just to build around it.
That's the thing. Like you always see in films, like in like a 3D movie, there's always like it's just a normal film, and then occasionally you get like bubbles on the screen that, or you know, something like jumps out of something. And I think like the moment in any film that stands out to them the most, that is like that is for 3D and nothing else, was in Mad Max Fury Road, when the Duff wagon crashes and the guitar goes flying out and then springs back again. And I was like, that was just for 3D.
Yeah.
I do like any scene where it's like an exterior of a spaceship in space. I like that in 3D. Like there's usually not enough space scenes, except in like Gravity. There's not enough space scenes to be like, this is worth the price of 3D. But I remember seeing Force Awakens, or maybe it was a Star Trek. It was like a Star something, and there was a scene with a spaceship, and I was like, yeah. And then that was it.
Yeah. I think we'll have to do a show on gimmicks at some point. I'll do a lot of research around that. We'll find out. Do you guys want to move on to your game?
Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. So if you've been watching these live streams, you'll know that I'm very hit and miss with my games.
Say that. They're always great.
So this one, I haven't taken this from Have I Got News For You, but let's be. Anyway, so we're going to do an odd one outs game. And disclaimer, these aren't necessarily summer blockbusters because that is too hard. These are just general blockbusters throughout the year. So I'm going to give you 4 different films, and 3 of them are all connected and 1 of them isn't. I want you to tell me which one isn't connected and why. I'll let you guys work as a group. So first one, speak of the devil: Avatar, Furious 7, Resident Evil, and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
So we're trying to find something, there's one of them that isn't like the others, kind of thing.
Yeah.
One out.
I think I've only seen 2 of those.
Is it the first Resident Evil?
Yeah.
Resident Evil, Avatar, what was it?
Furious
7.
Transformers was one of them, wasn't it?
Transformers.
Yeah, Revenge of the Fallen.
Right.
I haven't seen Revenge of the Fallen or.
Which one's that? Is that like the third one?
The second one.
Second
Right.
one.
It
That's
can
the
be
one
on
during
any aspect, by the way. Just
during
Can
the
you
writer's
name
strike.
Okay.
Okay. My first looking at them, I feel like Resident Evil is the only one that wasn't in 3D.
Ooh.
Revenge of the Fallen. Actually, that might have
When
been
you
just
say
before
in
3D.
do you mean had a 3D release or was filmed partly in 3D?
Was released in 3D.
Yeah. Okay.
Furious 7 definitely was. Revenge of
Okay.
the Fallen. Was the first Transformers 2004 or 2006?
I want to.
7.
Oh.
7.
Mm.
Oh, then Revenge of the Fallen would have come out around 2009 and 2010, which is when Avatar came out and there's the 3D craze.
Oh, that makes sense.
But
Right.
Furious 7, I feel like Furious 8 was like 2 years ago, 2018. Furious 7 would have been like maybe 2015, 16.
I think it
So
was
that
16
Yeah.
16.
or 17, maybe.
So it still would have been released in 3D, I assume.
Mm.
The odd one out of those, do you think? I think you're onto something with the 3D thing, though. don't
I
know.
also feel like Furious 7 and Revenge of the Fallen came out in the summer. And I think Resident Evil might have too, but I don't think Avatar did. Well, I know Avatar was December.
Mm.
These names like all blur into one. I keep like Furious 7 and like Revenge of the Fallen. They sound like they're the same movie. I don't know.
I've not seen Resident Evil, so I'm struggling with
Me
that one.
neither. In fact, I've only seen 2 of these movies.
I haven't seen Transformers either.
Avatar has alien dogs. Resident Evil has zombie dogs. Revenge of the Fallen has robot dogs. Furious 7 has no dogs. I don't know. I haven't seen Furious 7.
Is Transformers the odd one out because it's the only one that's a sequel?
Ooh.
Furious 7 is.
Yeah.
Good to have a sequel.
Yeah.
6 sequels.
That was a good shout as well, Duncan. We'll keep that in
thanks.
mind for the next questions because that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Mm.
Oh, I've got it.
What?
Oh, yeah, okay. Revenge of the Fallen is the only one that doesn't have Michelle Rodriguez in.
Yes.
He's not got a poker face. Peter can't.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it, Peter?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, well done.
The 3D one's one too, but it's not why I built it around. I thought Resident Evil would be the giveaway.
Yeah, I as soon as I went through the cast, I was like, yeah, no, that's easy.
Yeah. I was just wondering because I wasn't sure if people would remember her in Avatar, but she's like the helicopter pilot or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And she's really cool because she wears the sunglasses.
Which is basically Tom Cruise's entire career.
Yeah, I really hope that the one he's filming in space is like Top Gun 3.
Right, round 2.
Okay.
Troy, Wonder Woman, Hercules, and Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. This is the Disney animated Hercules, by the way.
Okay.
Well, damn it, they're all originals, aren't they? They're all like first of their kinds. Have they all got source material? No.
Troy does, but it's history.
They all Greek
They're all based on
mythology except
Greek
for Wonder
mythology.
Woman, which is Roman mythology. Something like that.
Wonder Woman. Well, I guess that like DC, like I would consider.
I thought Amazonians are Greek.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, I think they're all Greek mythology.
Oh wait, yeah. Could we be onto something then?
Yeah, I mean,
Also-
Percy Jackson's the Greek gods. Troy is.
No, I mean like
you know,
source material is in
Oh,
like
right, yeah.
it's got a book that it's based off. It's not based off of an original screenplay.
Wait,
or-
are Amazonians Greek? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You might be right.
I don't
Duncan.
think that like it doesn't matter for those purposes.
Mm.
They're not all like ancient.
But they're all like based off
Yeah.
a culture.
Yeah.
No, the Amazonians is Romans, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because the other gods in DC are Roman, whereas in Marvel they're all Greek.
Yeah.
Ah,
I mean,
wait, aren't they like Nordic and
some of
Marvel.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, they have no like, but all that like they've got Hercules and stuff like that in
Mm.
Marvel as well.
Oh, damn. Okay.
And somehow they've got. Yeah.
But Peter hasn't called it yet, so I assume.
Yeah, so I don't think
That's
it's actually
not
to do with
Peter's.
the mythology.
Well, you've been sort of like listing things that group all of them together, but one has to be different.
Is
Yeah.
Troy based on something? Is Troy the only one that's based on like
Well,
a real
no.
event?
That,
based
that's
on the
based on the
Iliad.
Odyssey. Oh, the Iliad.
Oh,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Was Wonder Woman based on a real event?
Yeah,
World
World War
War
One.
I suppose.
I suppose Percy Jackson's the only one set in modern day.
Wonder Woman's partially set in modern day at the ending.
Oh.
but-
Yeah,
Right.
start and end. It's big
yeah.
ended.
Darn.
Oh.
Hercules is the only one that's animated.
There you go.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That could be it.
Again, it's sort of like the first one where it's true, but it's not really what I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay. Only Wonder Woman has a female lead.
That's true.
I mean, Hercules has my color.
Yeah.
Rare. That's not-
Megara.
But
Yeah.
she's not like a lead. She's
Yeah.
love
Well,
interest.
as in main character, yeah.
She's got the songs now.
I mean, she's got a song.
That's
Yeah,
true.
but it's called Hercules.
That's the point.
Anyway,
Oh,
that's
is
not it.
Troy the only one that's not named after the main character?
Ooh,
It is.
Ooh. Good, but also not it. See,
Oh.
you're getting a lot of brownie points here, but it's actually a lot less obvious.
a lot less.
Yeah,
We,
I-
we
I-
missed
Of course
Troy
it-
Brown, the character.
I think it requires you to sort of have seen the films and know
Okay.
the
I haven't seen
Well,
Hercules.
I
and
haven't
know
seen
the
it before.
context around them.
Troy.
I've not
I've
seen
seen
Troy.
Troy.
Hmm.
What were they again? Troy, Percy Jackson, Hercules, and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'd say no. I was gonna say armor, but that's like
Yeah.
I might have made
Troy's-
this too hard.
The only one without a sequel.
Oh.
No, did Percy
Hercules
Jackson.
doesn't have one.
Percy Jackson has a sequel. Yeah.
Um,
Is it? Hmm. Is it to do with casting again? It could be. I mean, I can't think of anyone who was in all of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too.
One of them would have to be a voice actor.
Yeah.
Hercules.
That's quite niche as well.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know it. I've never seen Hercules. So.
Was
I
Danny
don't-
DeVito in any of them?
only Danny
apart from
DeVito is the one I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was Wonder Woman. There's a lot of prosthetics.
Yeah. Oh,
Do we give in?
could do. They all undergo the classic hero's journey. Probably. Except Troy.
I don't know about Troy. We're Percy Jackson.
Do we give in? I want to know the answer.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Wonder Woman, Hercules, and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief all feature physical gods or physical representation of Greek gods,
Oh, cool.
except Troy, which, despite being
Yeah.
heavily involved in the Iliad, omits them.
Yeah.
That's
Ah,
good.
yeah.
Wait,
I
isn't
was
But Troy
Achilles
has no
one-
fantasy
isn't
in it.
Achilles meant
No
to be
fantasy. They made
Yeah,
it more
I was
historical
thinking
than
that
it is.
about
Right.
mythology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a good one.
Oh, that was good.
Next round, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Mission Impossible 3.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So Mission
Is
Impossible
Ghost
goes
Protocol
for-
4?
Yeah. Mission Impossible 3, Ratatouille, and what was the other one?
Incredibles.
The Incredibles.
Incredibles.
Oh. Do I know this off the bat? Is it that Mission Impossible, Incredibles, and Ratatouille are all directed by the same guy? No. No, they're not.
With directed by.
Is it The
Need a bit more
Incredibles
than
and Mission
that.
Impossible?
What was that, sorry?
Need a bit more than that.
They're all directed by Brad Bird.
Whoa! Back of the net.
Yeah.
I was hoping to throw you guys off because all four of them are. Oh, wait. You haven't got this. Which one isn't directed
It's The
by Brad
Incredibles.
Bird?
The Incredibles.
Mission
The Incredibles.
Impossible 3 is directed by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah,
The
that's it. And all four of them were composed by Michael Giacchino,
Oh.
Wow.
which is why I was hoping might throw some of you guys off. But I didn't throw Devon
Oh,
off.
you thought, Peter.
I know. Right, this is actually the first one I came up with. The Dark Knight, Terminator Genesis, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Ghostbusters 2.
Oh my word. Ghostbusters 2, that's obscure.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. Can you read them out again? Sorry.
The Dark Knight, Terminator Genesis, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Ghostbusters 2.
They're all sequels.
That's true.
Well, we need
They're all
help on-
second ones in a series, apart from
Azkaban.
Prisoner of Azkaban, which is the third one.
Genesis isn't the second
Oh
Terminator.
shit! Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course, yeah, Genesis.
Yeah.
Genesis is like the fourth or something, isn't it?
Hmm.
/
Or
reboot.
5th.
seconds, depending on how you're looking at it.
Yeah, true. Actually, yeah.
Does one of them not bring back all the original cast?
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Terminator Genesis is recasting left, right, and center.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Dark Knight recasts. What's her face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. I don't know if they recast anyone.
They recast the secretary
Azkaban
woman.
recast the Dumbledore.
Yeah, Michael
That's
Gambon.
true.
Yeah, and the secretary
It is-
woman in
it
Ghostbusters
is-
2, she was recast.
Damn it! So they're all recast.
Oh, were we getting close there? Yeah.
Very close. Very close.
Wow. Okay.
Oh.
Ooh.
Something to do with the cast.
Or like, yeah, he's dying.
You're really close, and I can't really tell, I think, because we're defeat the purpose of the game.
Did one of them recast the main character?
Retrace your steps.
Okay.
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 Dumbledore.
Ghostbusters 2, it's the
Dumbledore was
secretary.
recast, yeah. Then
Genesis, it's everyone except Schwarzenegger. Harry Potter, it's Michael Gambon.
Dark Knight's Rachel.
Dark Knight's Rachel.
is it the fact that in the Genesis they like recast more, whereas in the others they only recast one? Does that make sense? Like,
It's not that.
no.
Although that could be true.
Thanks.
Well, sort of semi-true.
In The Dark Knight, they recast. Oh no, that's the same in Genesis as well.
Is anyone from Doctor Who in Ghostbusters 2?
No.
Because Terminator has Matt Smith and Prisoner of Azkaban has
yeah.
David Tennant.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Good point.
I don't think Dark Knight has any old doctors.
Oh, you know. Oh wait, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's all good. I thought I messed up and that my condition wasn't true, but it's true.
Oh, is it
Really
something we're
messed
going
up
to
my
kick ourselves for when we hear what the answer is?
Yeah, because you guys pretty much had it.
And we were pretty close with the recasting thing. I would say that they only recast men, but that's not true either.
He's dying.
You know, like, I'm willing to give you guys the point anyway, because you pretty much had it.
Shall we just get? I want to put him out of his misery.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay.
Tell us.
You were right. This is about recasting.
Mhm.
Dark Knight, Katie Holmes was changed for Maggie Gyllenhaal. Terminator Genesis, among other people, Linda Hamilton was changed for Emilia Clarke. Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban had Richard Harris after he died being replaced by Michael Gambon. But Ghostbusters 2, everybody in the main cast returned. So it's the only sequel to have the original cast reappear.
Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
you're so close, but the
Yeah.
secretary was the same in both.
Ah,
Which is why I was
By the
fact
secretary.
checking there. I was just like, wait, maybe it was
We got it wrong.
It's like, nah, it was the same.
Alright.
Too iconic to change.
Yeah.
oh, we
That
want
was
more.
very good.
Yeah,
Well done on that, yeah.
got a couple more.
Yeah.
So,
Do you mind if I quickly switch from my laptop to my phone on this quickly? My laptop's about to run out.
yeah, go for it. Well, yeah.
Keep going,
Um,
definitely.
Oh, by the way, Amazons are part of Greek mythology.
Oh.
Fun fact, they cut off one of their breasts so that they could do archery better, so it wouldn't be as
That's
obstructed.
cool.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be like weight distribution?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's the point. I guess your arms are different, though. But I know what you mean. Maybe you get used to it after a bit.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Hello, return.
Hey.
Cool.
You look a lot more found footage.
Yeah,
This
there's
is
Blair
Brian.
Witches somewhere in the background. So what was the? I missed the question. Sorry.
No, I haven't started. Round 5. There's 2 more rounds.
Oh, great.
Batman Returns, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Well, Jurassic Park's the only first one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I would have said they were all the third, but that's not true.
Yeah.
Again, that's not what I was going for. You guys are going to love brownie points.
Thank you.
Was
So
it
they-
Last Crusade? Sorry.
Yeah.
Last
They have family relationships, because I mean, most of them. Because I mean, Indiana Jones 3, he's reconnecting with his dad. Terminator 2, it's the mother and son with. No.
Well, Terminator becomes a father figure to him because he
Yeah.
never had.
Yeah. And Jurassic Park, it's all about like him getting the father role.
What was the last
Oh,
one?
but Batman
Danny
Returns.
It's also about how they can't love each other.
Yeah.
And the only
damn it.
difference is that Danny DeVito wants to reconnect with his dead parents in Batman Returns, but he doesn't. He decides to kill everyone with penguins.
Guys, please watch Batman. I'm saying this to Devon because I still don't think he's seen it. Watch
Nope.
the Tim Burton Batman movies. They're brilliant. Especially Batman Returns.
Oh
Obviously.
god, yeah, Batman Returns is so good.
It's amazing.
Okay.
I think it's another classic, like, it's a Christmas film, but it was released in summer.
Mm.
That's actually
the
a Home
same thing
Alone
with
one.
Shazam as well.
Yeah.
In April, it's like...
Oh wow.
Who does Batman Returns have in?
Michael
Michael
Keaton,
Keaton.
Michelle Pfeiffer, and Danny DeVito.
And Christopher Walken. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Oof.
There's
I
not
think
one
that's about
with
it.
Clooney in them, are they?
Oh, that's Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah.
And it was the first
Oh.
Jurassic Park, right?
yeah.
Wait, do they all go in order 1, 2, 3 Well, like Jurassic Park's the first one, Terminator 2's the second one, Indiana Jones 3's the third. No,
No,
that
because
wouldn't
Batman
be-
Returns is number 2.
Yeah.
That wouldn't really be a similarity.
Hmm.
It would just be like a connection, I suppose.
All the genres are pretty different.
Do you think it is to do with the in Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, and it's about the father figure and Terminator? The lead role is got something to do with the father-child relationship, whereas Batman, although Batman is sort of like, I don't know, it's about his he lost his parents as his inspiration, but
And it's the Penguin's abandoned by his parents at birth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Are we close with that?
I really appreciate like all the thought and sort of analysis into it, but it's not that. I'm really appreciating the conversation that's being provoked by this odd one out round, but
Yeah.
I've got absolutely nothing apart from the first thing.
I think it's actually a bit simpler than you guys do. But what do I know? I created it.
I'd say they all have no. They at least two of them have a love interest. I think I'm drawing blanks on this one.
I think is it something more to do with cast and crew? Maybe how one of them was directed by ones, and then one of them was acted ones. So we kind of went through actors, and there isn't really.
Yeah,
is it
not like some of them are like the first big efforts of someone. Indiana Jones is like the third of the Spielberg films.
Well, is it something to do with the three of them are summer blockbusters and one of them isn't? Because they are all blockbusters. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because you could say that Batman Returns is a summer block, is like a Christmas film, and all the rest are summer blockbusters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he just said Batman Returns was released in the summer.
In the summer.
Oh, right, yeah.
Pretty sure I'll have a look here.
Maybe
He's pretty sure it isn't that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I don't know.
For reference, it was a summer movie. It was released in June. Which is, it's hilarious because this is the week on Christmas Eve. The whole thing is that it ends on Christmas Day. It's my Die Hard in that sense of this is a film I like to watch at Christmas.
Nothing says Happy Christmas like Danny DeVito biting someone in the face.
Does Batman Returns have a motorbike again?
I don't think he has one.
Darn it.
I think it's too trendy for him at this point.
Don't know.
I'm struggling.
Yeah,
I think you guys will kick yourselves when I tell you.
Yeah, probably something really obvious.
We always do.
Have we come close with any of it?
Was Steven Spielberg involved in three of them, and we're missing something?
Yeah.
Was Jurassic
He
Park and
definitely
Indiana
wasn't
Jones?
involved in Terminator 2.
Yeah, but are you sure?
I don't think he was involved in Batman.
No.
Okay.
You guys have done well so far on the other rounds. You've stacked up for any points.
John Williams scored Jurassic Park, and I think he did Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I think it was Danny Elfman did Batman Returns.
Correct.
And I don't think Elfman or Williams did Terminator 2.
No.
At least I don't think so.
It's definitely not practical, not effects or anything, because, Batman Returns was made on a shoestring.
Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park both have helicopters.
That is true. There's a bit in Indiana Jones 3 where they try and shoot down an aeroplane with a handgun, if that's anything similar.
The seagulls with the umbrella of the seagulls.
I can barely remember Indiana Jones 3. Yeah, I don't know.
John Connery.
I don't know.
You guys give up?
Oh, hang on.
Oh,
Could it?
what? What?
I was
What have you got to lose?
It couldn't be that, like, because Sean Connery's a Bond actor,
Oh,
but I don't know if there's a Bond actor in Jurassic Park.
No.
Jeff
There is
Goldblum.
another Bond actor in Indiana Jones 3, though. Julian Glover. He's the guy who was Mr. Pycelle in Game of Thrones and Aragog and Harry Potter.
Hmm.
You in any of the other ones? He couldn't have been.
I think we should give in.
Is it like one of the actors in each film was in a film together? And one of
No,
them
I'd love that, but it's not.
Yeah, oh, that would be amazing.
Or at least I don't think so.
I'm still paying for something to do with childhood trauma. There's, because they're all got children in them, except, well, they're all like fairly traumatic events happen to children in these films.
Yeah. Except in Indiana Jones. Well, kind of actually. In Indiana
No,
Jones
because
it
3.
has
the
the very beginning. It's all about it. So
But you need an odd one out.
They all have sequels, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But you
You
need
weren't
an odd
sure.
one out.
I think
Yeah,
it
but I
goes
was
unfortunately
thinking, like,
for all of them.
because in Terminator 2, the mum's dead in the sequel.
Hmm.
But no.
Well,
Oh, the
it's-
Indiana Jones
No,
3,
she
the
isn't.
father's dead in the sequel.
No, and yeah, that's right. No,
I don't know. I've
what's
never
that called for
seen
Batman Returns?
Batman Returns sequel or Jurassic Park sequel.
Have you not seen Batman Robin?
I haven't seen any Batman pre.
It was followed by
Batman
Batman
and Robin
Returns.
is the
Batman
one.
Forever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Batman Forever, though, that came after Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Hello?
any of them change main leads afterwards? Yeah, because I think that they go for they change from Michael Keaton to Val Kilmer in Batman Forever. They go for in the oh god, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. He's famous for being himself. I'm going to kick myself in a second.
What film are you talking about?
Jurassic Park. The guy, he's the mathematician in Jurassic
Jeff
Park.
Goldblum.
and-
Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, he's the main
He's the
character in Jurassic Park
in the
2.
second one. Yeah.
it's
But Indiana Jones doesn't have a well.
No, that could be the
He's,
odd one
he's
out.
still the main character in Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah.
So is that
But the other ones, like, they shift them, right? Because they've got a different main lead for Terminator 3. Oh no, it's still Schwarzenegger. I'm thinking of the.
No, but it's still. It very well could be that in all of them, one of the main characters dies off screen for the sequel, but I don't know. But Batman Returns and Jurassic Park sequels, so I don't know for sure.
No.
If I create something worse in the IMDb, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was
feel like
possible,
it's
but
something
yeah.
more obvious than that. Ah,
You guys give up?
I'm out.
Duncan?
I've got nothing. I'm
I
going.
tapped out like a few minutes
Yeah.
ago.
Angus?
go on.
Let's hear it.
They're all 90s movies except for Indiana Jones and the Last
What?
Crusade.
Oh my god.
Terminator
What?
2 was 91, Batman Returns 92, Jurassic Park 93, but Indiana Jones Last Crusade came out in 1989.
This is terrible. You're terrible.
There we go.
No.
You're a genius. You're an evil genius. You
did-
might be
This is
better
why I
than
was so
Sven.
entertained by this whole like childhood trauma. It was great. I loved it.
You
I
are
was
officially
enthralled.
cooler than Devon.
Who's creative?
Oh, that's so good.
Right, last one.
Last one.
Okay. Transformers, The Fast and the Furious, Shrek, and Skyfall.
Only 3?
No.
No. there's
Transformers, Fast and Furious, Shrek, and Skyfall.
Oh, okay. Fast and Furious 1 was that?
more. Yeah, The Fast and the Furious.
Fast and the Furious, Shrek 4.
I love the titles. I've never seen them, but I love the titles.
The titles are great, aren't they? Yeah.
It's Too Fast, Too Furious. That's the one.
That's the
like
best one, yeah.
that should have been the fourth one.
Yeah.
Well,
I
the
think the
obvious.
franchise with all the best names is probably the Sharknado ones, because they're all rip-offs of other stuff.
So it was
The Force
Shrek,
Awakens.
The Fastest and the Furious. What was the others again? Sorry.
Transformers, Fast and Furious.
Too
Right.
Fast, Too Furious. Oh, sorry.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what are we listening
Transformers,
off?
Fast and Furious, Shrek, and
Ones that you
Skyfall.
said, Peter. The ones that
Yeah, okay. We're not like listing off all the Fast and Furious films.
Wait, do all of these
Uh,
films have "the" in the title apart from Skyfall?
Well,
No.
Transformers doesn't.
Oh
Or
yeah,
Shrek.
of course.
The Transformers.
The Shrek.
It's Shrek. Hey, there is only one Shrek.
That will
want
be the
to-
reboot in like 10 years.
Directed,
Shrek.
It's like
directed by Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
a horror spin-off, The Shrek.
And then there'll be
Oh,
the James
God.
Cameron sequel, Shreks.
Oh.
Are they all originals?
No.
Skyfall is the only sequel.
Yeah.
True, but not what I'm getting at.
Aw.
Is it to do with cast? Because I can't think of.
Shrek's the only animated.
So many brownie points. Neil Polish was a little bit more.
Oh no, but it's very hard to find just
Yeah.
one difference. Like one
Yeah.
like loads of similarities and one difference.
Shrek's the only one with no cars.
True.
There's an onion carriage.
Yeah.
That's in Shrek
Actually,
too.
Shrek's
Oh,
the
no,
only
it's
one with
in
no
Shrek
car
as well.
chase.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't seen Transformers, so I can't say.
Yeah, but they do
same.
turn
So
into
it's not
cars.
a narrative point.
Mm.
No, as opposed to turn into cars. Oh, sorry.
No, I
it's
mean
not.
like the thing that
Yeah.
if you haven't seen the Transformers one, if you just
Means
haven't seen
that
one of the movies you're talking about, it can't be like a narrative point. It must be something else.
I don't think any of these have been narrative points. I'm not that kind of person. Well, actually, the Greek one was a little bit of a narrative point.
Yeah, I suppose, kind of.
Yeah.
So maybe something to do with directors. Does anyone know any of the directors? For
Michael Bay did Transformers,
Hmm.
and what's his face? The American Beauty 1917 guy did Skyfall.
Sam Mendes.
Sam Mendes, yeah.
Who did Fast and the Furious? Who did that?
I don't
Can't
know.
remember, and I can't remember who did Shrek, so I don't think it's
Yeah.
directed.
Shrek's the only fantasy, so to speak.
Hmm.
I mean, the Transformers is a male fantasy.
And that's
Um,
kind of.
they all have a male lead,
Yeah.
I think.
I haven't seen Fast and Furious, but like Michelle Rodriguez is a lead in it, right?
Oh,
Sam
I thought it was
yeah.
The Rock.
I thought it was Paul Walker
With Paul Walker, I'd argue, is
of the first one.
film.
Yeah.
It's hard because I
With
think
Vin Diesel.
And
I
then
think they are ensemble pieces though.
Mm.
This is a good one.
This is-
Skyfall's the only British film. All the
Oh.
others are American.
oh,
True,
Um,
but not that.
ah,
So many
Um,
brownie points.
Shrek is the only one not set in the present day.
and yeah.
I mean, who's to say, really?
Wait, is this just Shrek the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Only one of them is
Okay.
a sequel. I think we've done that.
I think this is harder than the other one, so I'll give you a clue. Yeah, you think about the
Thank you.
greater whole. Like, the
What these
bigger-
films mean.
So
the
what you're
bigger
saying-
picture.
what you're saying is we've been focusing on the layers.
Is it fan
like an
bases?
onion.
Like
Is it fan bases? Is it fan bases?
No.
Oh.
Ah, I thought we were gonna be getting into the
The
I don't
toxic fan bases of Shrek,
Shrek, the
James
Shrek.
Bond,
God, definitely.
Fast and Furious, and Transformers. Shrek is technically the only kids' film.
I mean, Transformers is made for 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Well, I think Michael Bay did.
Shrek is a PG.
Is Transformers not? Is it 12?
I think
It's a
it's
12.
well, it has swearing in it.
Yeah.
I was allowed to
Yeah.
watch it for a long time.
Yeah. I remember my parents told me to turn it off.
Shrek has swearing.
Yes, mine did too.
I know Shrek actually has a bit of swearing in it, actually. I was
Does it?
surprised to discover. Yeah, Donkey says crap at one point.
Blooming heck.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that.
I know that Fast and Furious and Skyfall obviously had the future film release dates affected by coronavirus. I don't know if I know Shrek 5's been
Shrek
announced, but I don't know if the date was affected. And the same for Transformers. I know at least one, maybe two films have been announced, but I don't know if the dates were affected.
I think this might be the hardest one. I don't know.
Yeah. Have we come close with anything we've said?
It's hard to say. You need to think bigger.
You need to think
Bigger?
about the bigger picture.
What's the bigger picture of the Fast and the
When you
Furious?
say the bigger picture, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like...
Well, like,
protect
forget
the animal
about.
world?
You need to think bigger about these films.
Well,
It's hard to say because I can't sort of say something and then like, oh, this is
Yeah,
it. Sort
it's
of
not-
thing.
okay then.
It's
What's
not
the-
a detail about the specific film, so to speak, I'm assuming. It's like
Yeah.
something to do with all of them as a whole.
They are all films.
Except Shrek, which is an abomination.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, get off.
Get off the radio. I'm joking.
Could
they're
it be
all good
like
films apart from Fast and Furious?
Shrek's the only film in which has had the same director for the whole franchise?
That's
Ooh.
true.
I don't know.
That's not
It
true.
sounded true.
I just think it's true.
That's not true.
No, it's not.
The guy who... in fact, there's no need.
I think Chris Miller directs Shrek 3,
Oh,
and he doesn't direct the other ones, or the previous two.
And I know the guy who plays Rumpelstiltskin in the fourth one is the same guy who directed it, I think. Or
no
was
way.
the director of very some weird thing like that.
Transformers 2 was directed by Michael Bay. Spectre was directed by Sam Mendes. I don't know the directors of Fast and Furious and Shrek.
Same, I don't think it's directors. He says the bigger picture.
What's the bigger picture of the Fast and the Furious?
I don't know if that's franchises or if that's film.
Okay. Maybe how many there are. So, like, there's
Ooh.
4 Shrek movies. There's, like, 9 or whatever Fast and Furious movies. How many of the others was there?
There's 4 Daniel Craig. No, there's
There's
at the minute
yeah.
there's only 4 Daniel Craig Bond movies.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then what was the final one? But yeah, but the...
Could it be that Skyfall's the only one which hasn't had a spin-off film?
Oh.
Yep.
Oh!
Yes.
Yay.
Puss in Boots, Hobbs and Shaw, and Bumblebee.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Skyfall, this could have been any James Bond film, but despite like 60 years of the franchise, they've never had a spin-off film. Although back in the early 2000s, they were planning on
Halle
doing
Berry.
a spin-off on Jinx, by Halle Berry from, is it Die Another Day she comes
That's
from?
right, yeah.
But
Yeah, and then
there is a Sean Connery film that was made in the 80s, which isn't officially
Say Never
part
Again,
of the
yeah?
Bond.
Yeah.
Never say
Never Say
never
Never
again.
Again?
Yeah, which
Yeah,
isn't
that's
which isn't canon in the Bond franchise, but is still a Bond film.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
remake of Thunderball, I think.
but I didn't consider it a spin-off because it's not like, it's still the main character and it's still based on
Yeah.
sort of a Bond book that was about Bond, you know.
More of a
It's not
remake.
like Hobbs and Shaw, where it's sort of like there's sort of like
Hmm.
important players in the film, I assume.
Or
but not
the
the main
casino.
focus.
There's Casino Royale as well, which isn't the Daniel Craig one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, it's James Bond. Like he's
Fair
the titular. The franchise is
That's
called
more of a
James
remake.
Bond.
Still.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah,
Good.
On
That was
one
great.
round.
that was great.
Better or worse than the "Is this headline true" one?
I think it says I think is this headline true was equally probably as hard, I think.
Yeah.
I think I prefer this one because it's a bit more creative and weird.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
More visual, I think, somehow too. Like you have to think about the movies a lot more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll bring them back in the future at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that pretty much does us for tonight. We went like an hour, 2 hours and 40 minutes or so.
Gosh.
This is going to take so long to like process.
Yay!
Oh
for
my
me
god, this is
and
going to
you.
take hours. But anyway,
There was a lot of movie news for a time where there are no movies.
yeah.
Every show we have loads to talk about at the beginning. It's like how there are no new movies.
Yeah.
You just gotta keep digging.
Yes, and you indulge me in letting me talk about Doctor Who for ages, and for that, I thank you.
Yeah. Do we have anything to plug before we finish here? Other than just like read courier pieces. We're always putting out new content. And if you want to read it, I'm going to shamelessly plug myself. I wrote an essay comparing Dawn of the Dead with Resident Evil, if you ever want to read that. So it's published by the Courier. Kat, film on Monday?
Shutter Island.
Shutter Island.
From like a members poll where like people suggested movies and then they voted on them, and that was the one. Very close win though, mind you. It was only like 6 votes for Shutter Island and like 5 for Reservoir Dogs, and then 3 for what was the other one, Angus?
Seven Psychopaths.
Seven Psychopaths, that's it. So very close, which is great. So yeah. So it's a Shutter Island on Monday at 7 p.m. and there's a Facebook event if you're interested.
Cool. I'd recommend watching Seven Psychopaths. If you have the
Yeah,
chance.
I think it's great as well. It's a shame it didn't win. But that's all from us. Yeah.
Devon, Tyneside?
Still keep your ears out. We're figuring it out.
Cool. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be back next week. Someone will be hosting, maybe me, and we might be talking about something. Not this. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. So bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks
What are
for
you
having
waiting
us.
for? Leave.